I've been an avid World of Warcraft player for a long time.
Who's your main? What's your main?
So I have 24 alts, and
I know your alts. Of course, we all have alts. What's your main?
Yeah. Well, no. Okay, fine. My main's rogue. I play rogue.
Okay, all right.
But I also...
I'm sorry. Who hurt you?
Who hurt me? I hurt them. But no, I not only do I have 24 alts that are max leveled, last expansion I got them all their rank 15 cloaks. So like,
shit.
Yeah, like I do crazy things with them.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like I'm very I don't know, bifactional, I guess. I'm very multi-character.
Hello, Ord, Tuta. Oh no,
anyway.
Horde, always. It took me one BlizzCon. Like I was Alliance for years, and then I went to BlizzCon, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm switching."
Yeah.
Oh, I switched. Hi, Riverboat.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, Jack. Today.
Hey.
Sorry about being late.
No sweat. It's literally built into the time. Like, it's like this is 2.5 hours long. The half hours for all of you.
Gotcha.
But no, it's fine. I'm so happy to have you all here. All right. So we have everyone. We'll get started. Thank you all for being here. This is the small council, which we have apparently Saturday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern. Who knows whether that'll change or not. We're just kind of testing things out at this point. But yeah, so I have an amazing group of people here with us to discuss the topic. And we'll start with Kino Elise. Kino, thank you for being here. How are you?
I didn't know this was going to be your first one, and I'm like kind of honored. Thank you for asking me to be here.
No problem.
Yeah. Are we doing intros right now?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I apologize. Okay. I am a digital marketing leader. I teach streamers, performers, artists, etc. how to business good and do your taxes and stuff. And I guess if we're introing, we should also do like our video game experience.
Sure.
Yeah, okay. I have some industry experience as well as teaching people within the industry how to land jobs and things like that. And I've been gaming since diapers, so it's also, close to my heart.
Yeah, thank you so much. Next we have Leftist Al. How are you doing?
Doing good. I'm the Leftist Al. I do, politics streams, gaming streams. I even sometimes do drum streams. I'm an avid gamer. I've followed the industry for years, and seeing it as it is now greatly disheartens me. So hopefully we can have a really good discussion about it.
Oh, we're gonna trash it. I'm so excited.
Next is Mad Lad. Mad Lad, thank you for being here. Mad Lad's a great moderator here, mod in this community. Mad Lad, tell the world about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm a professional chess coach. I have a chess business that I started during COVID. It's going pretty well. We're offering free trial classes if you guys are interested. Oh, I should just post all this stuff in chat. Hey, I can do that. I invented a chess opening. That link's going to be in there. I have a website. That's going to be in there. And I stream. I stream World of Warcraft. I stream chess. I stream other random things. And yeah, I don't know. I like to have a good time. And Kino, by the way, I'm going to be picking your brain later because apparently you do this whole business marketing
That's
thing,
what I'm here for. Yep, absolutely. I'm following you right now. I'm a little disappointed there's no Twitter on there, by the way.
Well...
Give me your Twitter links.
Fair enough. Okay. So
we'll talk. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thanks so much. Next, we'll go to Riverboat Jack. Jack, great fan of the channel. Looking lovely in your white thing. I don't know. The thing that you're wearing.
It's like a bodysuit with like a little shiny.
Oh, she got.
Wow.
Oh,
that's all.
Oh, you
fancy.
got the underbus coustia. Yes.
Oh man. Oh yeah, they're all fancy today. Well, I'm honored that you do that all for. Well, I guess maybe for other people, but but thank you so much, Jack. And yeah, introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Jack. I stream leftist political commentary over on twitch.tv/riverboatjack. But originally, I was a video game journalist for about 8-9 years. I still moonlight as that sometimes. Covered I was pretty mainstream. I was like wrote for official Xbox magazine for a while and Game Informer, and then I spent the majority of my career writing about video games for a nonprofit called Extra Life, which is pretty big in the Twitch space. And then I transitioned to like working on tabletop games professionally, and I also do consulting on video games. I'm working with a consulting firm occasionally to basically come in and be like, yo, you're doing this stuff wrong, you're doing this stuff right. And so far I've worked on about 4 different projects.
Thank you.
All right.
Enshima, yet another moderator here in my community, doing a great job. Enshima, please tell a little about yourself.
Yeah, thanks. So I don't think I primarily have a background in video games. I mean, I sure have been gaming in various forms since I was a kid. I think I have enough knowledge about this topic that I can bring a bit more of a substantiated background regarding, leftist politics and critiques of capitalism and how these things kind of intertwine. So I talk about leftist politics and environmental issues on my stream, twitch.tv/Entroma. And I also do some nerd gaming stuff like GeoGuessr and other things now and then as well.
Okay. Thank you so much. All right. So we'll jump into it. I'll read out the topic. Is the video game industry an example of capitalism gone too far? The industry has been accused of being exploitative to both its workers and customers. To its workers, who aren't unionized, the industry forces them to work ridiculously long hours just before a game launches. Employers have also been accused of emotional and sexual abuse of their employees. To its customers, the industry often lies or exaggerates its products. It also takes advantage of them through systems such as loot boxes and confusing digital currency. Can the industry be reformed? Do you have any hope that things are improving? Or is there simply too much money on the table for the industry to operate in any other way? Okay. Yeah, so I've actually wanted to talk about this for quite a while. Like, I've been trying to fit it into, the other shows, but just never quite happened. So I'm really curious what you all have to say about it. So we'll do intros. We'll do like a minute-long intros, and we'll go from there. So why don't we save Kino and Jack for last, right? And we'll start with I left this out.
Yes, I think the game industry definitely has a problem with how it treats its workers as well as its player base. We've had people like Jim Sterling or what's his name from Kotaku, Jason Schreier, uncovering the abuses that happen at these game companies and how they don't necessarily threaten their workers to get things done within a certain deadline, but there's an implication of them getting fired if they don't finish the game after this deadline, and so they end up crunching putting in long hours, like 80 maybe even 100-hour work weeks, just trying to get the game done within this certain time frame. And I think not only do the developers suffer, and we should definitely focus on their suffering the most, but also the games themselves suffer from this. We saw this with Cyberpunk 2077 when, all of these, all these different factors led into the game just being a complete and total failure, and just absolutely dropping the ball at every point, because the company consistently put out these videos that seemed like the game was running well when in reality it wasn't. And I think it's important that we, focus on those issues, focus on getting these workers unionized and improving games as a whole through that, and by encouraging game companies of pushing the dates back on games if they're not finished.
Let's go to Madeline.
So I'm going to have like a very most of my point of view is going to be very consumer based. I learned more about these problems over the last year than I've ever heard before. But generally speaking, I've noticed a decline in quality from games overall, right? That was like my first indicator that there's something the matter in the industry. And it's like this sort of system. So like I'm going to use World of Warcraft as like the primary example because I've put like so many hours into it and blown dollars on it, etc. But what seems to happen with World of Warcraft, they create like these convoluted systems to keep you spending time playing the game. You spend X amount of dollars. They're measuring success in the number of consumers that they can keep subscriptions maintained. Basically, like they're trying to maintain subscriptions rather than improve gameplay, improve quality, work on like award-winning gameplay, that type of thing. And what ends up happening, they will like string you along. They will literally say, hey, if you sign up for 6 months at this point, you will get this really cool artful mount thing that you can use, etc., etc., right? And then people will like spend the 6 months on this mount, and the next expansion will be released like the following month or something. So it's like just a stalling tactic to kind of keep you invested in the game. And like this would be okay from a consumer point of view if the quality of the game was improving, or even from like the developers standpoint, if they were getting paid to like more as a result of this. But what's going on, it seems like all this money is just going to the investors, and not enough of that money is going to the people who put in the actual work to create the game. And the crazy part is that Blizzard let people go while making all these profits from this type of plan. So like the fact of the matter is, all the money that Blizzard's generating by doing this isn't going somewhere worthwhile. It's not going to the people who actually produce the games. It's going towards the actual capitalist part. Now I understand there's a need for business, right? Like making money is a part of what drive. I'm not gonna say that this is like I'm not purely anti-capitalist. I think a hybridized system is ideal. So I think I want to balance this by saying that there is a way of doing this correctly, and the way of doing this correctly would be to create a system where developers get paid fairly, and investors get slightly less. Like they don't have to make as much. They don't have to penny pinch to get all their profit. They can literally, cut their profits in half, say, and still make way more than they deserve, and make the game better, right? And make the workers who are working on those games have better quality lives. And like I get it. I've worked on like for a small chess business. Even before I started my own business, I worked for a small chess business that was teaching 7,000 kids a week. And we had to do lots of scrambling, and like there were 60, 80-hour weeks, right? But like my company rewarded me for my time and my effort and made me feel good about I was probably on my last legs anyway, despite all of that. But my company actually went out of their way to make me feel good about the effort I was putting into it. And I feel like these corporate video game companies aren't doing the same thing for their employees.
Thanks so much for that, Matt Lad. Next, Entrama.
Yeah, so I certainly think that like the video game industry isn't the only prominent example of widespread exploitation under capitalism. But I think it does bring up kind of an intersection of important issues, both in how like employees are treated and how products are marketed, and how consumers are potentially exploited. So yeah, I think there's obviously the example of employees having to perform under very high pressure deadlines, and these companies that develop video games are often very male dominated. It's a very male dominated field, which can contribute to the aspect of sexual abuse, sexism, discrimination, things like that. The topic does bring to mind kind of an important distinguishing factor for me with this issue, which is when we talk about like exploitation under capitalism, whether it's of consumers or of employees, which there are examples of both here. So like exploitation of consumers is an issue, especially when you have like young children. They're coerced into making like in-app purchases. They're often they can be roped into things that are arguably, gambling even in some cases, when they're marketed as just fun games. And the aspect of like high turnover with products and consoles always having to have the next best thing. It's a very high rate of that. And the bigger trend we've seen of transitioning to like recurring subscriptions versus just one-time purchases also maybe it is related here. But the main thing is that I think, or another thing we need to touch on is distinguishing between. I don't think this is like one of the worst examples of like consumer exploitation, mainly because often when that's really an issue, it's because it's there are basic needs that aren't being met that people have to fork out a lot of money for, and it can cause people, and it can keep people in cycles of poverty. And video games are often like a luxury good, right? So we have to kind of make that distinguishing element there. But I think there is exploitation of employees, which is more of a baseline issue, regardless of what kind of product they're producing, where they're underpaid, overworked, and under a lot of pressure in these situations.
Thank you. Next, Ribo Jack.
Yeah, the long and short of it is that when it comes to video games, I think that this is an industry in particular where the rubber kind of hits the road of like politics impacting people's lives in a way that like at the very least younger people are definitely understanding. Like this is why I think that like Jim Sterling has done amazing work talking about the effects of capitalism directly on the products that are being created and how that affects consumers, how that affects workers, and it's just very blatantly obvious when we look at the video game industry, because in games it's kind of like this new frontier that like a bunch of like interested independent creators came into, and then just like it got blown up by capitalism, and we see that all across the entire industry, whether it is workers literally working so hard that they have to like sleep under their desks, whether it is companies working employees until they literally have mental breakdowns, whether it is loot boxes and like specifically targeting children with known addictive mechanics that were previously only limited to like casinos and gambling, whatever it is. The main driver behind all of these things is the fact that these companies are, by and large, privately owned by the shareholders, by CEOs, etc. And those shareholders want returns on their investment. Like it's not like there's this really complicated motivation here. The shareholders want the biggest return on their investment possible, and you get bigger returns by forcing employees to work overtime that's unpaid, by cutting corners when it comes to development, by using predatory practices to get more people to spend more money. Like it's not rocket science. That's literally how capitalism is supposed to be set up to work. It creates an antagonistic relationship between the employer and the employee. But the good news is it doesn't have to be this way. If you look across the video game industry, you're seeing an increasing push for unionization, which I'm not very hopeful for. But what I am hopeful for are some of the beacons of hope when it comes to democratic worker co-ops. For example, the developers of Dead Cells. They're an anarcho-syndicalist collective, meaning like they don't have any hierarchy in their company. Everyone in the company gets a percentage of the profits of the game, and because they're a small enough team, they can get away with that horizontal structure, and it works relatively well for them. And other examples are like Stray Bombay, which was founded by like ex-Valve employees. Another example is the Glory Society, which was founded by the people who made Night in the Woods. So like there are big names attached to a growing trend towards democratizing the workplace in video games. And my hope is that people will support that and continue to build more of these corporate structures.
Okay. Thanks so much, Tina Elise.
Good intro. All right. I do have hope that capitalistic entities can be rectified and rebuilt. I'm going to echo a lot of your sentiments. It sounds like we kind of universally agree on that. I think the video game industry also is a symptom and not the problem. Everyone has worked and overpaid, but especially those within the creative industry very specifically. I think that Total Biscuit, rest his soul, was right to call out the industry on things like DLC way before it became prominent and toxic within the industry, especially for companies like EA. He saw it coming, and I don't think that it's too late to fix. To add, video games are a means of passive income for large businesses. There's an initial investment in generating content, which then leads to minimal management thereafter. So things like DLC, boxes, events, etc. The problem, I think, does lie in what Jack mentioned, which is ROI, return on investment, and what passive income means specifically between small creators and what large businesses do, which is extremely exploitative. So when I say that passive income is part of the problem, if not the main problem, that drives these toxic industries, I'm not saying that it is passive income that is in itself something that is toxic, but the ways in which large corporations exploit it is the negative. They're able to literally propagandize their own game, but they also get people like literally addicted to it, using generated audience data that caters to creating literally as much dopamine as possible to get people addicted to their games. It's a money market that has been taken advantage of. And basically, I'm just interested in fixing capitalism. Can we do that tonight?
Hell yeah.
No,
I think we
Let's
can.
end it right here.
we can help.
Open to the panel for general discussion. Oh my god.
Yeah, just kind of like build off of what Kino was saying. Like we're still living in an age where marketing will literally tout how addictive a game is as a positive for it. Like your children won't be able to stop. They're gonna have the shakes after playing this game. It's so exciting. They'll have so much adrenaline. They'll keep coming back for more. Never gonna stop. Can't stop. Really can't stop. like
And then afterwards, they'll inject heroin.
yeah, exactly. It's a
Same
video
thing.
games are a gateway drug. Okay, that's what
They're
I'm
gonna
getting at.
charge hundreds
I
of
wanna
dollars
say-
to your credit card.
So I want to say, actually, to that point, if you tell a parent that their kid will never leave the screen when they buy this game, the parent will be scared. Like, as a parent who has kids who's like, already addicted to my cell phone, and they're not even like in kindergarten yet, like it's terrifying. So I don't know, but it used to be a thing, right? Like it used to be like, is the more you spent, I feel like it used to be a thing where if people spent time using a product, then that meant the product was good. And I think culturally speaking, we're starting to realize that that isn't a good thing at all. Like I think people are actually realizing the like lack of quality that comes from like spending time playing it. Like even me as someone who spent like hours and hours playing the game, I would feel terrible while doing it, right?
Mhm.
Like I remember once like I threw something across the room over something like super petty. I don't remember what it was. And then I was just like, wait, why am I even playing this game right now? This sucks. Like literally it sucked, and I was like, all right, nope. I turned everything off, and then I stepped away from for 2 weeks because I was like, this is terrible. So I think like there is a general trend towards us as the consumers starting to realize that this stuff does not work the way it's been working. Like we don't like it, and so companies will eventually figure out how to make us like their stuff again. And I don't think it is just video games. I think this is entertainment too, like generally speaking. Like if you think about like, what happened to the Star Wars movies or Game of Thrones, etc. It's literally like profit driven mistakes, not like, they gave it their best shot and they just couldn't make it work. And it's yeah. Anyway, that's my thought.
Okay, yeah, I agree with that point if we're going after that it is just a complete money-making market and they will literally throw out whatever fodder possible to make a quick buck. Yeah, I'm on top of it with you on that one. But also to the point of concerned parent though, I grew up with a family that didn't really care what I did as long as my grades were up. But I wasn't allowed to read, ironically. Oh, dude, it was hella Puritan. It was awful. Anyway, so yeah, like the video games were my mistress growing up, and my parents were totally okay with that. So from my upbringing, video games is a way for parents to not have to parent their children. And I think that you're right that societally we're recognizing that there is a toxic consumption of content. But there's also, I think, a subsection of people who enable generations to be glued to the TV screen all the time.
Yeah, I mean it's true. Like if I have to do like work around the house, that type of thing,
Mhm.
I may let my kid watch way more Doc McStuffin than she should for a little
Yeah.
bit because like I just need to get through it.
Yeah.
It's funny that you say that because like my household was the exact opposite. So like video games were like totally banned, reading was encouraged, and I still
Which-
had video games as like my mistress, if you will. Like my brother actually would conduct like this sort of underground trade for other people's Game Boy games and stuff. So, and this is the most ridiculous but true story I have on this. My brother brought back. This is actually going to be also very heinous too, but there may have been some relics from Iran that were brought back from our trip there that my brother proceeded to trade for someone's Game Boys and Game Boy games.
Yikers!
Stuff like stashed under the bed. It was crazy. So yeah, I think it's interesting because like we had like a very similar experience, I feel like, as far as like relying on video games for entertainment like throughout our lives while still having like a completely different course that our parents brought up. So I think that would be an interesting thing to explore as well.
Yeah.
But probably on a different panel. We're talking about capitalism and how it's ruining the games.
Yeah,
right?
fuck capitalism.
So I guess the question
Capitalism.
So I guess like the question would be what would be like the ideal meshing of capitalism and entertainment? Like what is supposed to happen?
So,
And then do we agree with that?
so I think
don't think
that one of the issues here is that I think a lot of people conflate capitalism with business, but like markets existed and business existed prior to capitalism, and business is going to exist after capitalism is done too. So like when we're talking about capitalism being the root problem here, what we're talking about is the private ownership that is of these companies that is able to make decisions that come at the expense of both consumers and workers in order to increase their own profits. Like that's the key relationship dynamic that is upsetting and damaging to the industry and also to everyone else associated with it that is not actively participating in the ownership of one of these entities.
I don't know if this is what you meant, but like I don't know if the ideal for me is to like make this system better under capitalism. It's to like change and like transition away from capitalism so that we can also then make a more equitable industry and bring about the changes that we want to see, because we know that they don't happen in a vacuum.
Well, unfortunately, that's what we're gonna have to do. We have to sort of have this transition from capitalism to something else. But we, in the meantime, before that transition happens, we do need to make things better. We do need to make it better whilst under capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
So this is actually going to be kind of funny because I feel like I'm going to have to play like devil's advocate for capitalism in a way, which is going to be like ironic because I know, right?
It's always one.
Like everybody I know who's like even remotely pro-capitalist thinks I'm like some sort of socialist or something, right? Like they're just like I know, like whatever. Like I don't adhere to a specific ideology. I'm like exploring. I like to explore ideology. So I guess like this is gonna be my role here because everybody seems to be fairly unified on this idea. And I mean, I think I agree on a lot of this. I guess the question is, like, I guess the first thing that comes to mind is how venture capitalism actually allows for the creation of more advanced products to start with. And I'm not saying this is a universal rule because I know it's not, but there's like this idea that you can get extra investment into a product, at least to start, if you have like folks with extraordinary amount of wealth like blowing it on something.
Are you talking about passive income at scale? Because that's exactly what I said. So passive income is a means of which there is a specific piece of content that is generated, and then without much management thereafter, it continuously makes you money.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So
Passive
that
income.
makes sense. Okay. So that's what we're gonna call. I mean, yeah. I don't know the terminology. Like,
I mean,
No worries, it's okay.
I'm groping in the dark here, trying to figure
Yeah.
out like
well, I mean, like
how to
that's
talk about this, right?
that's kind of part of the problem, though, right?
Yeah.
Like, when you're incentivized to get the maximum amount of profits possible,
ROI. Yep.
that's literally why we're seeing like the rise of live service games and like always online content, and like that's really the direction innovation is going right now. And it's not something that at least from what I've seen most consumers want. You know, like
Right.
for a lot of people, like the weakest part of like the latest Assassin's Creed games has been like the always online components, where they just randomly generate quests because you're linked online, or like the microtransactions, and that those are examples of squeezing ever more money out of these things, and it is indicative of the fact that venture capitalists will never hit a point where it's like, this is enough money, right? This is this is a great return on investment. We are very satisfied. No, they will always in this system want more, which is why we are seeing going from like predominantly experiences you pay once for and then you're done, and moving towards these always online evolving experiences. That's something that I think is worrying and indicative of the fact that going forward, these venture capitalists and these private owners are seeking to commodify every second of your time within a video game.
Do you think that you mentioned consumer demand, that consumer demand specifically wants 24-hour access and loot boxes and all of that shit, but Assassin's Creed 2 was one of my favorite video games, and it was single player, and then they introduced multiplayer, and I stopped playing after that. I couldn't stand it. Do you think that perhaps the demand for constant access to video games is a symptom of capitalism and more along the lines of advertisement and that dopamine button that they have on us?
Who are you asking?
Or anybody. Or do you think that without that, in the absence of capitalism, in the absence of the free ability to continue to market towards especially como se dice, vulnerable markets, do you think that the video game industry might look more similar to what it did 10 years ago?
I think it would look much. I honestly, I don't know any video game developer that's like, yes, microtransactions, they're great.
Right.
Like you know, you used to play like N64 GoldenEye, and you just had like big head mode.
Perfect Dark.
You know, or Perfect Dark. You just had big head mode. It was real fun. Now that's $2. You know, like, and that's another $2 that they can extract from a player base of like 100,000 people. You know, now you know. Fortnite has every single new dance that comes out on TikTok, they co-opt and make a bajillion dollars. Like, it's literally just a means to get that bigger return on investment. And it doesn't have, but like the important thing, and I mentioned this in my intro, is it doesn't have to be that way. Like, we have companies that are at work right now that are doing things that most of us have heard about before, that are structured as like democratic worker co-ops. For example, one of the big ones that kind of works behind the scenes is Tailspinners. If you've played Amnesia Rebirth, Disco Elysium, several others, like I think they do work for like Eidos, Montreal as well, Soma. If you've played any of those games, they're the writers who came in and like wrote the stories or helped write the stories and edited the stories. And like, we can have that, but for the rest of the video game industry too. We don't have to have this private ownership. And in fact, I would argue that we would actually see improved games by moving away from that private ownership, because generally speaking,
Two.
employees don't want to like put shitty things in their games. They want their games to be good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and just look at the like with the Call of Duty franchise, they put one out every year, but almost all of them are always the same. They with a different skin. And not only that, take a look at
They don't
Lord of the
wanna
Rings
take the
Shadow
risk.
of War. Yeah, take a look at Lord of the Rings Shadow of War. That game literally has an ending locked behind doing loot boxes because you either have to spend like hours doing this like mini game bullshit or you pay for loot boxes and get to the ending quicker. It's
It
gone.
sounds terrible.
Yeah,
Do you think that video game makers, video game producers, etc., really want? I'm going off of what Riverboat said. I'm sorry. When you said that video game coders don't want to put out shit. Do you think that how do you say that? Do you think that part of the purpose is to innovate? Like where does the profit sector come from then?
I wouldn't say a game that that incorporates money into its core game mechanics is innovative. I would say that that's a game that's sole purpose is to make money. Like I don't think the goal there is to innovate on game mechanics.
No,
It's
Yeah, generally I agree.
just-
I'm talking about people who make the video games though, the artists, the soundtrack creators, like everybody that puts their heart and soul into the creative process that don't want to put out shit.
I think to kind of maybe get at your question,
Help me, thank you.
I think that it's no, like individual actors within private business. They're not like, we need to maximize the profit. Like, they're trying to make the best thing that they can within the given system. But it's the people at the top who are, setting the timelines. It's the people at the top at EA who are like, yo, Dragon Age team, you gotta make a sequel to that Dragon Age Origins game that everyone liked. You got 1 year to do it. Go. Like,
So it's a problem of seizing the means of production, in other words.
I mean that's
that.
what I've been talking
Yeah.
about with these democratic co-ops. They are essentially that. The workers are controlling their output, and I think that's lovely.
So
And largely benefits the end product too.
So all those, so basically, I think what we seem to be agreeing on is that in the past, the video game industry was better than it is present, right? That it's worsened. However, the video game industry in the past grew up under the system of capitalism, and like for decades, it was what it was. So, what do you think specifically has changed? So, you're saying, I think, Jack, you were saying that you have venture capitalists getting involved and dumping money into these games because they blew up and they became big business in itself. Is that the only thing that's changed? I think something else changed, but I'm just curious what y'all have to say.
Yeah, I mean, you can talk about the way China opened its market. Like, that has had huge impacts on video games. It's not just like, oh, we have Genshin Impact now. It's like, no, behind the scenes, like, Tencent is investing in like every single major video game company, and that does matter because while it does provide a giant influx of cash to the company, it also creates new expectations of the return on that investment. We keep coming back to that. But the other thing is, like, back in the day, for example, developers could make things, I don't want to say with less effort, but with smaller teams. The original team that worked on The Legend of Zelda for the N64, that was 25 people. When we're talking about some of these best games of all time, there's a reason that Doom was able to be released as a freeware game back when it was originally developed, and that's not something that would really happen now. And it's because back in the day, more developers had more direct control over their end product.
I
Not
agree
only
with that. Oh, okay, go ahead.
Not only that, technology has made it easier to make games and to implement these systems to exploit people's dopamine receptors. Like there's like loot boxes and like DLC and stuff like that wasn't possible back then.
Is
you
it
just didn't have the
WiiWare's fault?
technology.
Is it
Huh?
WiiWare's fault?
Is it WiiWare's fault?
It
WiiWare?
might be.
Do you remember WiiWare?
Yeah.
WiiWare was when the Wii came out, and people got hold of assets, kind of like what is that the Valve game where they it's not a game where you are able to use Valve assets.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? It's like that
Gmod?
sandbox. Yeah. It's basically like that, but for the Wii, and we called it WiiWare because it was just crappy, shitty games where people would just use assets and make the cheapest game possible, release it onto the platform if it was. I know that Steam is greenlit, but I'm going to use greenlit for want of Nintendo's word, just to make a quick buck. And that was as far as I know, that was the start of it.
And then we
Sorry
saw.
to interrupt you, Will.
Well, then we saw the testing of the limits with horse armor. That but like, yeah, I mean, video game companies and developers and publishers have always complained about how different practices cut into their profits. It used to be renting games cuts into our profits, and then that system died. And then it was used games cuts into our profits. And now that system is kind of going away now, largely because of how these private businesses now have the tools to have always online services, and that prevents you buying a used game. Or famously, like Mass Effect 2 had like a key code system that was
Hated it.
really weird. So like
That's another thing we can get into is the anti-piracy software that they usually pair with games that end up making the games run like shit.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we could have talked about No Man's Sky the entire time.
Yeah.
I think one we talked about like the last even like 20 to 30 years. The development of the internet has, I think, enabled a lot of the practice that we see today, where you can have like ongoing subscriptions and content that you can buy in game and like multiplayer, right? Which you couldn't have done 20, 30 years ago.
So yeah, I mean, that's a part of it too. I think there's like a research and development factor as well. Part of the reason why you could have such a small group develop a game in like the late 90s is just that the coding and the ease of creating the game was just there. And as technology has increased, our capacity to make games that are good and realistic, or whatever features we're looking for, has gotten increasingly more complicated. So I think like part of the problem is the fact that there is a demand for something that's a lot more complex than what Doom was in the 90s. But I also kind of want to get into this sort of idea where the research and development on how to make video games more profitable also kind of happened, right? Because like video games were big in the 90s, say, and like, more capitalist venturers got into it, and they tested a bunch of different business models until they found something that worked repeatedly, and that is make kind of a crappy game that has lots of addictive features and profit, right? Like just magic. So I think that is what we're experiencing now, and I think there's a lot of pushback on this sort of level of profit management. So then the question is what the next phase will be. But then also, if my postulation that games are more complicated now and it's not as easy to do things now as we did 30 years ago, what is the solution to get enough support? I mean, I guess like the democratic co-op sounds good, and I've also heard a lot of former Blizzard employees are creating their own games that are more true to the form of like games that are good instead of games for profit. But is there anything else? Like, would it make sense, for example, for there to be like this balance between profit managing and good game content on some level? Like, is there like, I'm really curious if there's like a middle ground here, because like even in a democratic co-op, I presume that everybody involved will want to generate wealth. I mean, even as a chess coach, like I'm not doing it for free, I'm also doing it for money, right? Like I'm trying to make a life out of it.
Subscribe to my channel, I could teach you how.
Oh,
Excuse me.
wait, what?
Getting the fucking plugs in there.
Prime over here just looking like shame.
The ultimate
I'm sold. I'm
capitalist.
sold.
Throwing in plugs.
Excuse
Yeah, that was like the.
Sorry. Anyway, can I start? Can I
Yeah,
go
go
back to
ahead.
Prime's point real quick? Okay. I'm gonna come back full circle
So-
to what you were saying though. So Primo mentioned that he had his own thoughts on what has changed. And I don't want to continue to berate and blame the video game industry necessarily. I think that they and profit and capitalism and the allowance that we give them is certainly the biggest factor that we can blame. However, we have changed too. I think that gamers, the consumer, demanded more. We wanted more DLC. We wanted more fan service. We wanted more in the pre-orders, more Alduin statues. Just like we kept wanting more. So they saw the incentive to shove more shit in our faces, and it's become problematic. And coming full circle back to your point, the industry, I think, is eventually going to need to circle back and give the consumer what they want if in fact it's universally too much, societally too much, to the point where it does start hurting their profits. However, all of us are just about within the same generation, I would assume. And Zoomers don't really seem to have a problem with the video game industry. They like all of the DLCs. They like the keys. They like the boxes. Like, they find all of this shit really exciting. I'm not in that category, but I am speaking from my experience with the Zoomers that I know, is that they like it, and they're the next generation, and video game companies are going to continue to cater to their primary demographic, and I think that might be Zoomers. I'll look up some data on that real quick.
I'm terrified.
So
Thanks. That
two
really hurts,
things.
actually.
Well, it's because it's their normal.
Yeah.
To us, since we
I
grew
know.
up on video games that
I know.
weren't like this, they've known is video games like this.
well,
Yeah,
so
but just
two-
having the
two
experience of
things
like
here.
torch. Oh, okay, got it.
Two things here. Like, I like it is a deliberate outcome that
Yeah.
Zoomers are more okay with loot boxes. That's why games targeting youth have incorporated loot boxes for a really long time, and now these kids who have been familiarized with loot boxes, to the point where like little kids will like be on YouTube and just like watch people open like loot boxes on YouTube. Like, they're not even opening the loot boxes themselves. It's just, I want to watch you
Dopamine.
open these things for the little for the parasocial Reno, and so it's been normalized, but I don't think it's because of like it is a deliberate outcome facilitated by these large companies who have been seeking to instill an acceptance of loot boxes, and they just took a much longer term approach to it. And the other thing is just kind of we expect more from video games. I don't know if that's necessarily true. I don't necessarily know if people expect more from video games now, or if that is like kind of like a PR line meant to like get us to just kind of accept, yeah, of course, people want more from video games now. That's why video games are $70. Because I mean, look at some of the biggest games that have been successful in the indie spaces, right? Like Minecraft. Minecraft doesn't have cutting edge next gen graphics. It's a bunch of blocks. It's like pixels the size of your fist on screen. And yet it is a household name. It is literally $1 billion game property. And or we can like take a look at some of the other really big successful games like Dark Souls or Demon Soul, like
Hollow Knight. Just say it, please.
Yeah, Hollow Knight.
Among Us.
Like these aren't games that were like AAA cutting edge tech. Like, no, they were made relatively within like the current paradigm, and like I don't think that there is really the constant need that we seem to think there is. And maybe I'm wrong about that. But
I mean, it
Well, I
depends
think
on the game, right? Like Hollow
there's some-
Knight, or go ahead. Yeah,
I was just gonna, there's some cases where like it's a really simple game, like relatively simple, like Minecraft or Among Us, and it's just some element of luck as to why it took off.
I would actually say
but-
that Minecraft is pretty complex. Like
Well-
Minecraft has like an infinite range of like
Yeah.
things that you can do in it, and I think that's why it's so popular.
Right. But I think our generation, or not, well, I guess I'm technically a Zoomer. The fact that the Zoomers are so engrossed in these types of games, I think, is not ultimately a result of their demand for it. Initially, it's more about they've been raised in a world where we've been able to optimize and make much more complex and more engaging games that like we can then they're engineered for this type of engagement. Right, so they've been raised in that type of environment, and so they've been nurtured to kind of want that and expect that from video games. Whereas maybe people in their 30s grew up with like Nintendo 64, and while they may have loved those types of games, they weren't quite on the same level in terms of complexity and engagement.
So I want to push back a little bit on this conditioning thought process here, just because, like you can have a generation that's conditioned to live in intolerable conditions, but they're still eventually going to find that those conditions are intolerable, right? So Zoomers are going to be more equipped and used to seeing loot boxes and this type of carrot on a stick thing. But I also think because they've grown up with it, they're also less invested in the process. I think as folks who experienced this older generation of video games, we're kind of used to the idea that there's an end of the highway somewhere. Whereas these folks know when they start playing this game, it's going to be this endless rat race. And the question is, do they want to burn themselves with another endless rat race? Yes or no, right? So I think it's just because folks are used to the idea doesn't mean that they're going to be poorly equipped to deal with it. I think they're more likely to actually reject the status quo and want something better. Yeah.
Well, I think, honestly, I think what we're going to see is, maybe more of an acceptance for loot box-based mechanics for the foreseeable future. I think we are going to see Zoomers being less tolerant of, the working conditions of people in video games, less tolerant of the way that workers are treated to make their games, because it's really bad. And you can point to these people are really well paid, but I mean, if you really dive into the labor practices in the corporate video game industry, it's you get hired for 6 months and then maybe you have to move to the other side of the country, and your family can't have a stable life. You just have to be this nomad, and it grinds you down.
Although with COVID, I think it changes things a little bit now too, though. More people working from home, so maybe they'll really.
For now.
So I do want to get to that.
Having control over their labor. Anyway.
I do want to get to that because I think that's actually really interesting, important. Talking about the side from the workers, but when it comes on this idea of what consumers want, I think maybe a mistake to paint with too broad of a brush, especially generationally, right? That Zoomers want and expect this, and then older generations want to expect that. I think you can break this down into where people are maybe in stages of their lives. I think that's a big thing, right? So for instance, when you're talking about these always online games that are endless, right? Who has the time to play that, right? Well, the younger kids, people who can invest in however many hours outside of school, and they can play that, and that's it. If you're older, it becomes a bit more of a problem. How long am I actually going to be playing in this, right? There are those games that want all of your time, not some of your time, all of your time. they try to pretend like they're going to create some sort of ecosystem, and you're just going to be investing like hundreds of hours into this thing. And for a lot of people, they're just, I'm not going to do that. I got other things to do. So I think that's part of it. Like, just like how much time does a person have, um, and then how much money that you can invest. If you have lots of expendable like money, right, expendable cash, and yeah, you can put it into those like loot boxes. I think for a lot of the younger individuals, uh, I think I feel like those who are into loot boxes now will get burnt out of loot boxes later. I think you know I, especially if you're younger, I think something like this appeals to you. It's like magic. Look at this, it's something new, right? But I think especially when you just have to work for your money, right? And you see it disappear. You're like, wait a minute, what did I spend this all on? I don't understand. It's all gone. And then like, oh, those fucking FIFA packs, right? Um, and then a new FIFA game comes out, and then I have to do it all over again. It's like the same fucking players. What? That's it. No more. That being said, there's always like, okay, so I'm assuming that the video game industry remains static as it is now, then there will still be newer players coming up to refresh that, right? So it doesn't end, right? Like some people give up on this stuff, realize it's just too much money for like fucking nothing. But then there's new younger kids who will come behind them. There's a few other things. I'm blanking now. Was like what I was going to say, but I feel like, oh, that's what I was going to say. I think so. I've had this conversation. I've talked about this with a friend of mine, a close friend. We talked about like the rise of DLC and microtransactions, right? And it was very frustrating. He's not a Zoomer. It was very, very frustrated because he loves it. Or sure, not even, I mean, I don't even say love it. More like he doesn't care. He's like a very apolitical type of person, right? And
Those are the worst.
yeah,
The ethics of it, basically.
yeah, and he, I like we've had like epic fights over this stuff, right? I'm like talking about the exploitation that's happening. All these of these people is like, well, so many of these microtransactions, right? They aren't necessary for the game, right? You don't need them to complete the game. So if you're buying, it's your fault, whatever, right? I'm trying to explain to this person, like, one, you've seen the change over your lifetime. I know you've seen the change and how the video game industry operates. But two, like it targets individuals. They specifically target people, like they're quote unquote whales, right? For exploitation. So some people who like literally can't help themselves, right, or don't have that self control, or maybe just children and haven't gotten a hold of a mommy and daddy's credit card, and then they're off to the races, right? And talking about how problematic that is, and it's like, yeah, oh, whatever, and it just very angry. So I just want to say, I guess I've rambled on for a bit, but that I think we missed something if we just say like Zoomers are like accepting of all this, because I'm sure they're not. And I'm sure I know people of older generations are also like on this bandwagon because they find something in it too. They may love like seeing the excitement of that loot box break just as much as a little kid, So.
I'm not prepared to actually express how much money I've spent on Blizzard products, so I will not. Just be glad, Prime, that it's going in your direction. But I do. So no, I agree with that because I've definitely. I remember when I first started playing games, I was all about like, oh no, I'm not spending money on this. Whatever, I'm gonna get it for free. And then one day, the shell, like my, stiff shell cracked, and I finally spent money on something I enjoyed, and then it became okay to spend money on other things, and then I realized that I guess I'm spending a lot of money on these things, and I probably shouldn't, and then I finally stopped, right? So I agree. Like there's this thing where like people are just kind of carry through this progression, and there's a new cycle of folks who are going to go through the same experience that I went through, right? But I think where these games are failing is that there's a decreasing number of these whales who to spend the money. Because like if a game sucks and people are talking about how bad it is, like World of Warcraft is getting like a terrible rap right now, and people are trying out Final Fantasy 14 instead, right?
They're going on an adventure.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if Final Fantasy 14 is gonna be better. I'm extremely skeptical, but whatever. So people like World of Warcraft has a bad rap. Everybody's starting to play Final Fantasy. Like everybody in all the different World of Warcraft guilds I've been involved in are talking about it, right? So I think like companies are realizing that there's actual consequences for sucking too much. And I think that they can kind of get the idea that they need to improve. I don't think they're going to actually figure out how to improve while trying to maintain the profit margins.
So
Like,
You're also talking about big box companies, though, that have the investment to be able to fix their shit, unlike something like No Man's Sky, which started off as a small indie dev, and then Sony came in and put all of these expectations on them with a larger budget, and we all know what happened there. But they were able to come back, but it's been, 5 years since its release? So it took them 5 years just to fix their own fucking game at this point.
And so this is another thing, too. When we're talking about private investors who have a say in the end product, right? Which is in a lot of situations. They don't necessarily know how to make video games. Like, they're at the top, they want a return on their investment. They don't care if, like, the next Call of Duty is an absolute pile of dog shit, because they know that the next Call of Duty is going to sell, regardless, because it has the Call of Duty name on it. So, like, it's one of those things where, like, the devs will tell the publisher, hey, we need, like, 3 years to get this game done, and the publisher will tell them, hey, you only get 2, because our investors, they want that turnaround faster. And like, if you invested $100 million into a game, you're gonna get your way. Like that's how most business works.
Right. So like, I think like for the Call of Duty games and games of that sort, where like it's just like, a new iteration of the exact same thing, if they don't actually figure it out and people just stop buying those games, I wouldn't actually shed very many tears, because, well, there was already a version of this game released. Like, whatever, just play Call of Duty 2014 or whatever it's called, and just move on. I think this is more in term. My concern in this regard would be in terms of like folks. We're still talking about big companies right now. We can move on to indie stuff later. I'm talking about like big companies that are maintaining games that are like, just ongoing with like endless DLCs and or endless patches, expansions, that type of thing. Like, I'm kind of wondering how they're going to do that.
But that's like every game now.
Yeah, right, fair.
I think
Passive income. Yeah, the point of most industries these days is passive income. Are you guys interested in the first point that Prime made?
Can you reiterate it?
Can I?
I made so
I
many
just-
beautiful points,
Yeah.
but I.
You do. You
but-
I
always
was dazzled by his rhetoric.
Entropy was going to say
Yeah,
something.
I just want to branch off
Okay.
before we switch gears. Oh.
Excuse me.
So I maybe think of like two kind of contrasting examples of ways you could like make kind of passive income or put out content continually. So like, Call of Duty, they come out with one every year. It's not that different, but everyone buys it every year. Versus something like Grand Theft Auto, they come out with like a new game once every 5 or 10 years. But with like GTA 5, for example, instead of focusing on developing the next version, they instead just expand the existing one and kind of just like keep people hooked with like recurring subscriptions. You have to have like PlayStation Network or something to access like online, right?
But would you call that passive income? Because, like you said, they're actively
That's
expanding.
true.
They're actively,
yeah. But I think ultimately, for me, it's an example of like why there's not necessarily better innovation under capitalism, right? Their motivation is to either come out with something that's not very original, or iterate on what already exists very minimally. And do that instead of coming up with something completely new in both cases, right? So sorry, I forget what the question was, but yeah.
Well, so specifically when my friend Kino mentioned passive income, she was talking about like minimal investment, right? So with Call of Duty,
Yeah.
right? Like
Minimal investment after generating one piece of investment or one piece of content. Yes.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think they
that.
both fall into that category, actually.
So Call of Duty, though, I mean, that's like it's still that's a brand new game. That's like a massive investment one way or the other, right?
Sure.
Even and even a better example. So push Call of Duty aside, right? Let's talk about like the NBA 2K series, right?
Oh.
Like that's even far more similar,
Mhm.
year after year, right? Like basketball doesn't change that much. Like Warfare, you can like make it futuristic, but basketball is basketball, right? And like, but year after year. I'm not sure if like the game itself, the iteration, would count as that passive income that she was describing. Instead, the loot boxes, the packs, including in it, that would be the
Sure.
passive income. That it will continue on like long after the person's
Yep.
made the initial investment. Takes minimal effort, just keep the servers running, especially those DLC servers. Keep those running. And then you put out another one, and people are like, oh, I guess I have to buy fucking Michael Jordan, like and a '90s version of Michael Jordan now. And so,
but actually, I would consider those next installments to be passive income though, because they already have a specific format of what the game looks like. They just switch up character models and maps and things like that. Yeah, exactly.
I think sure things like loot boxes are the most basic form of passive income. But when you talk about games that when you have different generations and they already have name recognition, they already have a lot of the foundation to create the next generation, and a lot of the content already that they need to like kind of change a little bit. That like there's some new content, but there's a lot that already exists, and that's I think is what is maybe passive, what you could consider passive in this case.
But even then, see, I disagree with. So I agree with like again the loot box part. That's great, but with Kino, you're saying that's passive. I don't know. Like first of all, I'm not in the game design business, so you have more experience than I do. So I can defer you there. But like we've had sequels before. I mean, obviously for a long time.
I'm specifically talking about like Madden, NBA, and things like that, where the format of the game is the exact same. Not things like Call of Duty that actually does take like a lot of time into investing into another game.
Yeah.
I agree with Kino. Like, I really agree with Kino here.
But what about finish this point real quick?
Like Sonic 1 to Sonic 2, right? Same format of the game, different levels, but like like
But I mean, completely different levels though, and they innovated each time though. I mean, Call of Duty, Madden's. I think that Call of Duty year by year tries to up the shock value, but they don't innovate anymore. I think that from maybe World War I, World War II, Call of Duty, whatever was next, Modern Warfare, I think, and then 4. I think that was like a period of innovation that they went through until the fucking airport happened. And then they just cashed in and made new skins, and that was really it.
Yeah, like it's definitely like a spectrum, right? Like you can have a sequel that is like really well developed. So like if you look at the Civilization series, for example, I played like every single one, right? So like Civ 2 to Civ 3, radically different. Civ 3 to Civ 4, radically different. Civ 4 to Civ 5, radically different. Like they really worked hard on tuning the system. But when you look at Civ 5 versus Civ 6, a lot of the stuff was very, very similar. Yeah. They just switched up the systems on like what tech trees to pursue, that type of thing. And it didn't really feel spectacularly different. So like you can see a lot of publishers are moving towards this thing where they do less work between the sequels to generate more profit. And the problem is everybody gets the new version and then you're like, oh, am I going to be all by myself playing the old version? But the thing is, if you do it so repeatedly like Madden and FIFA and all these other companies have been doing,
there's no more FOMO.
There's no more FOMO. It's like, all right, no, I'm not doing this anymore. You guys can get the new version. I'm never playing this again.
Wasn't there a recent sports game that came out and was just utterly broken upon release?
Was that NBA 2K?
NBA 2K?
I think so.
I think it was the latest 2K.
I mean, I don't know how they did that. If like, it's supposed to be like the same thing, is it not?
Maybe when they copy paste, they actually put an N at the end, and it just fucked everything up.
Right. Like it sounds like, man, how bad do you have to be, or like how lazy? Like not lazy, but like I don't know. Like the lack of care is to do something like that is pretty astonishing. If you're basically copy pasting a game.
Yeah, but Prime, do we agree now, or are we still fighting?
Oh no, it wasn't a fight. It was a bit of no.
I know.
Yeah.
We need
Yeah, no,
content.
it was-
we need
Okay.
And it's
Drama.
yeah.
I just want to make sure you finish your point so I can
No,
fight
no,
you.
no problem. Yeah,
Okay.
I just but I think I like Mad Latin. What you're saying, that's a bit of a spectrum as to like
Yeah,
how much
I
effort is put
agree.
into like.
I would say
sequels.
it's a
fair.
sliding scale. Yeah.
But you wanted to say something, Kino. You wanted to bring it to something I said again.
Is it lesson time? Can we go into lesson time real quick?
Please go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, tight. So Prime's first point regarded what is called market segmentation. So in this case, he said to not judge specific demographics and psychographics. It was to rather not judge universal. So like Zoomers and Boomers and like specific generational gaps. But instead analyze demographics, which is age, gender, income, marital status, ethnic background, psychographics, which are activities, attitudes, personality, and value, and geographics, which everybody knows, and behavioral, which is very specific, I think, to what we're talking about, which is the benefits of usage, the patterns of usage, and usage rates. So what I think is going on with the gaming industry and what arguably makes it so toxic these days is that these companies know how to cater to a much more universal market segment. So when we're going after, say, Call of Duty, and as Prime said, we're instead of looking at generational gaps, we're looking at specific market segments. It's very hard to differentiate why they continue to make such a profit and why they continue to push passive income the way that they do, because they make it as universal as humanly possible to sell it to the most people. Good game, everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, so my brain is I'm processing everything.
Now,
right now.
one thing I would add is that you could theoretically have all of these kinds of business practices in like in a democratic worker arrangement, or like where the workers collectively own the means of production, etc., etc. You could technically still have these happening, and all of the critiques would still be as valid. I just wanted to throw that out there into the conversation.
Yeah. So go ahead, Matt Latin, if you have something to say. And I'm not, in case, just for the audience, if you hear sounds, it's thunder outside. So
I saw the lightning on your window.
Yeah.
I was watching that too.
We're in the same place, Prime.
So I'm taking all this into account. So we've got all these market segments that companies are using to try to sell games to as many people as possible. And these conditions change over time. So this was an explanation of why this is happening, correct?
Perhaps why I think that when we talk about what the problem is, it's so difficult to nail down because it's not generational, it's not specific, so it's very difficult to analyze.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so that makes sense. I guess I wouldn't say though that it is hard to analyze, because like with the various with that level of understanding of why these companies are able to sell their products, couldn't you say that they're hitting sort of the same universal group repeatedly with the same sorts of products, and thus they will be tired of these products, and the companies would have to try to reevaluate how they're doing this?
By definition, no, because what I'm saying is that market segmentation is a very broad spectrum on how we identify different types of people. And the video game industry is going after as broad a category as humanly possible, whereas indie games, excuse me, I'm so sorry. Indie games, you look at Hollow Knight, and the demographic that's playing that most on Twitch right now are our generation. I think the youngest person I've seen playing it is 23 or something like that.
I know an 18-year-old who does it.
Okay, perfect, good. It's the best game ever made. Please go play it. But yeah, indie games talk to somebody like me, and we nail down a couple of specific market segmentations for them to cater their game to, which also gets into the type of art that they make and the type of game that it is and all kinds of things. And I'm hearing myself whose mic is on.
Sorry,
I can hear myself.
Okay.
Can you hear yourself? I can hear you.
I can hear your echo too.
I'm
I think
sorry.
it's Mad Lad. Sorry.
Matt.
Wait, what? Impossible.
Somebody was trying to silence me.
Bacana! Bacana! It might be you.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah, well,
I was
all
supposed to
right.
push.
But yeah, by definition, no. Short answer.
Okay, so anyone else?
I had
responding
something.
to-
I had something I was gonna add. Just that when we're talking about market segmentation, one of the things that private businesses do quite a bit is they allow other entities to take on the risks that they otherwise wouldn't. And so when we look at indie games, that is traditionally now where the most like innovation regarding like mechanics and graphical styles is going to take place now. So you're not going to see like an EA putting out a really edgy, boundary pushing indie game, right? They let other people do that, and when that edgy, boundary pushing indie game comes out, they co opt some of those ideas and incorporate it into their own development structure. Whether that's for a AAA game to like use those mechanics, or for a different purpose, or for like smaller games that they might put out as like indie light, like kind of indie, but it's being made by EA. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Sponsored
EA
by
could
them.
be the publisher, and then the
Right,
developer
exactly.
could be, yeah. Mm, okay, so
Sorry, I fumbled that point a lot, but thank
No,
you
it's
for bringing it home.
no, it's fine. Kino, could you repeat your reword it your question that you
In
wanted to?
response to Mad Lad, or
No, just what you said before. The first thing you said, to all of this.
The really smart thing.
oh, Dio,
About this,
the response about micro segmentation?
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Dio. Your thought was about how we shouldn't do generational gaps, and you were talking about market segmentation. I explained that. I don't remember what question I asked though. There was a question. Tag me out, Coach. I'm not sure.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Chat, help.
Not a big deal. But yeah, I think that there's so many pieces to this, right? And I feel like we're only scratching the surface. And okay, so here's something I like to ask. So a part of the problem that, like, going back to that discussion with my friend, oh god damn it, is that he's like, well, these video games are more costly to make, right? And like, basically claiming poverty for the video game industry. If you just look at their earnings, that's not the case. They're more wealthy than ever, right? So then for them to say that they need to make games $70, can't really trust them there, right? Like when you're making so much money, making record profits, and then firing your workers any which way. Here, I'm looking at you, Blizzard and EA. Fuck you guys, right? But like, if firing your workers nonetheless. But we can still understand. Look, they're going to be corporations, and they're going to want to increase their profits somehow. So, is there an acceptable amount of extra profit, like side income that we can accept, right? So like I'm guessing no one here is going to say loot boxes, right? But like, what about
that be up? I feel like it shouldn't be up to like us, the consumers, to decide what's the acceptable level of like profit that should be made off of like exploitative practices.
I was gonna
It should
say,
be up to
take
the
care of your
workers.
employees. Yeah, exactly.
no?
Take care of your employees and then make profit.
No. Okay, so
Okay.
I'm separating two issues. Well, so
Okay.
but maybe I'm doing it improperly. So you guys can tell me. So in my mind, what I'm thinking of is like, even if you have a company that takes care of, like, not all video game companies are exploitative. We already understand this, right? But that doesn't mean that they won't take advantage of these extra profit opportunities, right? And so let's assume they're doing their best, right? In terms of the employees, but like on the side, right? Like what do you think should be what's your limit as to what you'd accept? So like I'm looking at DLC, right? I'm thinking of DLC, and I remember, like DLC, like expansions, right? And like big expansions, right? So like Fallout 4 had like a lot of expansion packs, and they were huge, right? Adding stuff to the game.
Halo.
That seems like, yeah, that seems great to me, right? Like, so like we can't expect for these, especially big games like Fallout is a perfect example, right? That the developer will have everything ready to go at launch, right? Because like just from the business perspective, like a game that already that big takes a lot of investment, and they're seeing nothing in return until it actually launches. Um, but once it does, right? And then that money starts pouring in, then they're like, okay, this is a successful game, and we can put more money into like building off of this world, right? And I feel like that's DLC like done right. That's the kind of DLC I like, But then there's also like the costume packs on the side, like so there's a range here. So like
I think that games in the past, the games that I remember fondly with their DLCs, the ones that I think that you are championing, because Fallout 4 is kind of an old game these days. Ideally, in a perfect fucking world, I would love to go like the Halo direction, where I think Halo 3 was out, they were continuing to release content, but they also had Reach in production or some other game that was a full fleshed out game. So in a perfect world, I think that the line for me would be when they can innovate and make a full game while also expanding their old IP.
I was gonna say, like, there's an actual example of this going horribly wrong with Star Citizen, right? Like, they start off with this like alpha that's like been going on for a decade and a half now. I feel like I don't know how long it's been going, but like they've been promising all this stuff, and people are investing like I don't even know how much at this point. Like, I feel like it's in the millions at this point, and there's still no game. People are just like kind of flying in space and doing some things. They're getting their ships. They're getting like these cool things that they will never actually use because there's never going to be a finished product. And I think like there would be this sort of balance, not necessarily in how, I don't think the balance is just what modes of profit are being generated. Like, it's not just like whether it's loot boxes or microtransactions or donations or whatever else. It needs to be something more along the lines of how fun does the game feel, and is profit generation hurting that fun. So like the profit generation is actually hurting the playability of the game, then that part needs to just be removed from the game altogether. This is the way I would like envision this.
Yeah, because you can have a game be profitable but not have microtransactions and stuff like that. It's not necessary to.
You're super quiet now. Is that just me? Hold on, maybe I'll try to adjust your mic on my side. But
maybe I'm just too far away.
Yeah, much better, much better. Go ahead.
But yeah, I was just saying that the profitability of a game isn't necessarily hinged upon like loot boxes and stuff like that. It's just that that enhances the profits that are already there. It's supplemental profit on top of the profits they get off of actually making and selling the game.
So, but I want to maybe disagree with that a little bit, because it really depends on the genre, right? Like thinking of fighting games. So what I was doing just before I turned this on, and what I wish I was still doing, even though I enjoyed talking with all of you, is that I was watching a Guilty Gear Strive tournament. Guilty Gear Strive. Guilty Gear is a long-standing fighting game.
That game looks
series.
real good, by the way.
It's so good. Oh my god, it's amazing. It's so good. But fighting games are very niche, right? Like horror games are also very niche. And so they also sell much lower numbers. You can still make them successful, right? Now, like success is different when it comes to like venture capitalism, what they consider success, right? But as for us, like a small tier company, the Guilty Gear is done well. Like I think it's still like 500,000 copies, but like compared to other games, right, that's actually pretty small, right? But it's a smashing success within the gaming industry, or the fighting game industry, right? But if you want to create more profit, right, then in that case, what they're going to do, and what all fighting games do at this point, is they sell you extra characters. And so, like, is that acceptable? Like, especially in an industry where it's niche. Like, I love Guilty Gear. I remember playing it years ago, right? But the thing is, I really fucking suck at fighting games, and I don't want to put the time and effort to learn them. And lots of other people feel the same way, right? So I just watch tournaments instead, and watch other people who have skill, right? But so the amount of people there who will invest in these things is much smaller than like a Call of Duty, right? Where you don't have to put nearly as much time in to get a lot of fun. So in that case, like, is it fine for them to just be selling you characters? Like, let's say it's like $10 per character, like that, which is a lot.
I think it depends on the context, especially in regards to like sequel fighting games, because I've heard a lot about sequel fighting games basically locking characters out of the roster and behind a paywall, like with the Mortal Kombat pre-order, where you have to pre-order or else you don't get Shao Kahn or whatever the fuck his name is, and that's one of the staple characters of the franchise. So I think it definitely depends. I think it's relatively fine for companies to sell extra content on the side, so long as it's substantial and so long as it's not exploitative like loot boxes.
It's exploitative. All right, now I'm gonna take a hard stance here. It is not okay to sell characters for $10 instead. So I was a big Soul Calibur 3 player, right? Or Soul Calibur 4 rather. And
Played that professionally.
oh, did you really? Oh, what was your favorite character? What was your favorite character?
Ivy.
Ivy? Okay.
Ivy, yes. Oh, well.
That's awesome.
I played
reasons,
but
Sophia.
A bunch of nerds in here. I didn't know.
This is great. I love this. I'm so excited. Wow.
I did love Soul Calibur.
Go ahead. I'm so sorry.
So they had Darth Vader and Yoda, right?
Yeah.
Xbox, and then they had it on PS. Was it 3 or 4? I can't even remember.
I think Xbox it was Yoda, and then PS3 it was Darth Vader.
Yeah. So but you could buy the other character as an extra patch, and like nobody I knew did that because we were all mad about it because like Yoda was cool, Darth Vader was cool, but we couldn't use them in the game. Like we basically picked the system that had the best version of Soul Calibur, and that's the system we brought into the house. And so we had a lot of fun with it. But buying characters is absolutely unacceptable because it impacts gameplay, right? Like if you're profiting off of modifying the game in that sense, it's like kind of reprehensible, even I would say. Like you're literally taking away people's joy for the game and insisting they pay an extra like tax to get that. DLCs kind of function the same way, but like DLCs are different because they're adding more to the game. It's not like with intent. So like let's say the game is released and then a year later there's a release of 10 new characters for X amount of dollars. That's fine. That's cool. But if the game is released with that in mind to start with, and you can start off buying like a bundle pack for this, I kind of don't like that. And I mean, I know that this doesn't fit into like League of Legends. Like League of Legends, I think has this as default, and a bunch of those types of games already have that starting off. And I mean, that's why I don't play those games. Like I think that's complete crap. There's one thing we didn't talk about actually that we probably should talk about, which is the humble bundles, right? Where like there's a lot of games that are being released. And then like there's these folks who kind of buy keys for all these different games and then sell them in bulk. And I'm wondering if that model like kind of fixes some of the problems that we're talking about here, right? Because like there's like an indie developers are having a chance of hitting that universal market. Like the folks who are creating these humble bundles are like looking for their markets, and they're actually able to sell indie games to those people.
You're talking about social capital, which I know all about. Yeah. So with what's going on there, I don't know if we want to finish the first conversation or if we want to move on to this one.
I did want to like say a couple things, but
yeah.
I just when I think about this kind of like sliding scale of like what's acceptable and what's exploitation, I think like you have to think about how much effort does it take to come up with X amount of content and how much are they charging for it. Like when you think about like a character that you could buy for $10 versus a DLC, that like opens up a whole new world or part of a world
Right.
for like $10 or $15. There's a huge difference there. So I think you have to look at the kind of scale of I think there's a somewhat nebulous line on that scale that at which I think it's acceptable, but there's a lot that exists kind of below that line where it's a single thing they're selling, or like a part of the game that doesn't require a whole lot of overhead to develop, but has like ongoing generation of income.
I think
So
that I've
So I just want to respond to this, and then we'll go to you, Kino. So I want to push back on you because a little bit. So your underlying premise in terms of the amount of effort it takes, and then compared to like what you're selling it for, I think is fair enough, right? But also like you also brought up like the value, right? So you compared a character to like an expansion, like in a new area, like a RPG, right? But for a fighting game, well, that is like an expansive area, like a one new character. I mean, that could be huge, right? One new character could be top tier, could be low tier, but one of the others is going to be people who are going to be manning that character, right? And digging into the mechanics of that character, and finding the absolute putting like thousands of hours into like understanding this character, right? So like in the context of a fighting game, actually is a lot like that you're offering. And I'm thinking of it, going back to the Guilty Gear example, right? Because there have been data mining that's been happening, and they've like figured out like who like the first 5 characters will be, and it's clear that, and this is something a bit separate from what you were talking about, but it's clear that some of these characters are not done yet, right? Like some are very much close to. There's like 2 that are very much close to done, and then there are 3 that we're pretty sure are going to be part of like the season 1, because these things come in seasons. We remember we talk about that, but season 1 of the DLC characters, right? So they're actively working on this, actively like balancing it out, right? So there's more effort, right? This isn't the passive part.
Yeah.
More effort is coming into this, and so is it fair to have that, right? Like because. All right, so there's so many things. God, there's so many things. Like we're really only scratching the surface because like, and fighting games are a really good example because rebalancing happens all the time. So previously, right, like one of the most famous, biggest fighting games of all time is Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Right, New Age of Heroes. Right, good game, but they have infinites there, right? And if you don't know what I'm talking about, an infinite is like an infinite combo. It's like an infinite set of inputs, right? That'll start an infinite combo, and that your opponent can't escape. Like there's like once you start, and assuming you keep going properly, you can kill them just immediately as soon as you catch them, and then you'll kill them. Today, if it came out, those would have been edited out. But now that's like part of the community. Like it's just the infinites are the infinites, and like it is what it is. But for these new games, those things disappear quick, assuming you have a good developer, right?
I guess there's some distinguishing to be had here, right? Where you might have, I guess what I was thinking of, where it's kind of cheap, where you might unlock a character or buy a character, but you do the exactly pretty much the same thing as you would before, but it looks cooler, or it's a prestige thing, versus like you unlock a whole bunch of quests or other things that you can do, which does enhance the game and add a bunch of other things besides just that character. So there's different levels of that.
So, like, I mean, I guess, like, this is a spectrum thing, too, right? Like, it depends on how much balancing is done to make the character fit. Because, like, if you have a character that's, like, so broken in one specific way, it can make certain characters just not playable anymore, etc.,
it changes
etc.
the meta completely.
Yeah, so, like, there's a meta, you have to follow the meta or redefine the meta and make it okay, that type of thing. So, like, if this is the sort of thing that does that, and the characters aren't fully fleshed out, I can definitely respect it, understand it.
The patches are free. I should have mentioned that part. Like the fighting game balances are free. Like the new character, you pay for that. But the ongoing patches, those are free. They haven't so far made you pay for that. But that would the problem with doing that, making you pay for patches, is that would break everything because everyone has to be on the same patch for the games to work. So if some people aren't paying for it, then they can't play the people who are on the newer patch. So it's the whole thing.
Right.
So
I mean, it'd be like
yeah.
the same thing as
Yeah.
like trying to play Madden 2020 when Madden 2021 is out or whatever. But no, I agree that in that sense, if these characters are being added in the same sense that a DLC might be added and is like something that's being really worked on and researched, I think that's cool. But I think this also feeds into my thought that folks are kind of so used to this endless rabbit hole of gaming that they're going to approach this with caution, because like once you start, it's going to be hard to get off that treadmill, right? Like, what if the new meta is like a character that you haven't bought yet? What are you going to do? You're going to have to buy the character. You don't get a choice in the matter. So like I think folks are going to be aware that they have to invest. I mean, this is why I don't play Hearthstone anymore, right? Like Hearthstone has its seasons, it has like all this stuff going on, and like, you know, they release a new season every 3 months. I don't have time to play the game to get packs for free, so I'm not playing Hearthstone whatsoever, even though I enjoy the game. And I think folks, I think like
That's
a
an
lot of these,
interesting point. Sorry.
yeah, no, I mean,
Well, bringing
it's
up
tough
card
stuff.
games though, because card games, I mean, innately we all know that card games are not pay to play, but if you want to build a good deck, you need to buy boxes and expansion packs. So when we're talking about game breaking and game altering mechanics, i.e. learning a new character, it's impossible to do it when there's a paywall. So it's more difficult to play against, obviously. What we're doing right now is categorizing releasing a complete game and using DLC to expand on it, which is great. But DLC characters or card games, cards, are, correct me if this is incorrect language or if I'm just completely wrong, but it gatekeeps poor people or people without sponsors.
Well, yeah, I mean the entire the entire ethos of card games, like from their inception, right? Like from like buying packs of baseball cards, has essentially been to gamify loot boxes. You know, like obviously back in the day, it wouldn't be called loot boxes. I'm projecting that
But
term.
loot boxes
But the
aren't
difference
game altering, it's aesthetic, right?
Yeah,
Well,
and
they
the
can
difference
be.
being
And
Yeah.
that
is that
that's what I would argue, that like buying a pack of cards is just having
Totally
more
separate.
impactful loot boxes.
yeah,
Um,
because you actually get something out of it that you could sell back either for more than what you paid for or for less, and that's the key difference between loot boxes and buying packs for card games, is that with loot boxes you don't get shit.
Well,
You
but
get
but
a
now
cool skin.
but now Magic the Gathering is online. Now Hearthstone, you know,
So
is
are loot
is
boxes
here.
just like going to be historically expected at this point? Because again, like card games historically expected that you need to make an investment into building a good deck. But again, like most loot boxes in my experience aren't game altering though. Does
Yeah, that's true.
the Dancy Rudy Tooty game that somebody in chat said, Fortnite, is that game breaking?
Dancy Rudy Tooty game?
That's hilarious.
There's newfangled games. They're
Anyway,
dances.
Them
and I
start dancing.
Fruitcakes with
we're
their
taking my loot
dances
boxes.
and
But yeah, is that game altering?
I don't think it is.
No.
I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
I
They're
don't
not.
think they are.
like same with
Overwatch.
Overwatch. I mean, you could make the case, I suppose, that like aesthetic alterations are also altering the game and changing your experience.
mean, it
I know
depends on
Jim
the-
Sterling
But
has
game
made that
enhancing
argument.
versus experience versus game breaking though are like I think
Right.
3 separate things.
Right.
So back to Prime's question though, like where's the line? When is it okay?
I'll tell you when it's not a fucking okay. So, like I said, there's a spectrum to these things. I was bringing up, to compare Strive, go to your Strive, and like the characters that have been mined on the PC version, right? To see like the advancement, right? Comparing that to like fully formed content, right? That's locked behind a token, right? Like a DLC. You buy the DLC. You're not downloading anything. You're downloading a code that unlocks the content that's already on the disc, right? On this DLC.
You mean
yeah.
Final Fantasy
Fuck
VII's
all this
re-release?
DLC.
What's a disc, Dad?
Well,
Can I just say real quick that chess does not have anything locked behind any gates, and if you want to pursue that game,
Go to
I,
hypechess.com.
Just wait until EA releases Chess 2
I would
to
be mad.
Hulu,
no, nope.
where you have to buy each individual piece and then buy the
I would be so offended.
Wait,
some other-
Mad Lad, have you played that like weird like 5D chess game that came out recently? It like has like time traveling pieces in it. It's real wild.
Wait, is this
It's
real?
like online.
It's real, yeah.
Oh my
Interesting. Well, so the thing is, like with chess variants, like a lot of variants are like just bad for chess, right?
Mhm.
Like as a professional chess player, I want to, kind of stick to things that are as chessy as possible in a sense. So no, but I'm kind of curious. So I'm probably gonna look it up now, unfortunately.
Well, that actually reminds me of a thing I was thinking about earlier, which is like, so Prime was talking about how purportedly games today, have more overhead, they're more complex, they may require more people to develop them, apparently, right? So they have to be more expensive. But I wonder if the format by which they're delivered also has an impact on maybe making them cheaper, where, we're just downloading them off the internet. So it's basically a limitless resource, you could say, versus like them having to have some level of overhead with like creating physical discs and distributing those. Could there be a?
These are so I don't know.
Sure,
Why
but does that make an impact? Is that important, or is that kind of negligible in the grand scheme of things?
like they were really really cheap to produce, like the plastic and the coating and the actual manufacture process. I don't remember the exact number now because they haven't been relevant for a while, but like I believe most discs, I mean, okay, anybody who remembers AOL remembers all the free AOL discs that you got, right? Like just in the mail randomly, like spam.
Mm-hmm.
That's how cheap CDs are. I don't think there's anything to it, really, honestly.
Well, and like shipping and distribution too, maybe.
A lot of games now are on Blu-rays, which may be a little more expensive to manufacture than CDs.
Probably not. I'm gonna push back on. Like, I mean, like the manufacture of discs is like super duper cheap. It's the content on those discs that are valuable, and like again, most people have the internet to download things from. So like. I mean, I guess like the more that people are using the internet to buy or get the content, the worse profit margin will exist for physical copies of the game. So I would make the argument that over time it's going to become so cost ineffective that they'll probably stop doing it at a certain point. But like as long as people are able to, I don't know actually, how many physical copies of a game are bought nowadays?
I buy physical copies. Fuck you all.
I like
boomer.
things that I can touch. Like my copy
I
of The
studied
Last
the Blade.
Guardian.
I
Guys,
still
now
buy
you
vinyl,
can buy
so,
physical
like-
copies and invert the cover
Now you
art,
can buy
and it has-
physical copies.
It has the different cover art if you flip it over. It's really.
But does
Are
it come with an
video games-
Alduin statue
Are physical
comes
video
with
games
Alden
going to make a
statue.
resurgence?
or
like,
guts or whatever the Marcus?
Oh yeah,
Marcus-
like a retro thing.
Yeah, like in 20
Yeah.
years, they're going to be like vinyl, Oh, well,
I
I
think
have
the
the physical
last-
copy of this game.
I think the last physical copy of a game I got and that I pre-ordered was Batman Arkham Knight. That was like the
Oh,
last thing
why?
I
Oh, wow.
purchased.
Oh, you basic. Okay.
hey, the Batman games were fucking
Look how animated he is.
So the
I will
last
defend
physical
those games
copy
to my
of a
dying
game,
breath.
I actually
Those
have.
Batman.jpg.
I actually have it under my desk right now. So I got the Star Wars Old Republic Darth Malgus
Oh,
statue that I'm
shit.
hoping will like one day sell for something amazing.
I thought that
no.
about my Beanie Babies.
I had Star Wars: Old Republic too. Oh man, Mad Lad.
Amazing game.
Yeah. God damn it. But okay,
They've released a new version, by the way. Not to like take us off
of the Old
topic.
Republic, really? An expansion or?
There's something that's going on in the Old Republic now. I feel like, or some game that was. It was the Old Republic, right? Am I wrong?
Yeah.
Hold on.
I have to check it out. Because I thought that was dead and gone. But okay. So there's something I wanted to mention before, and again, there's so many other parts, and it's not going to get to them all, unfortunately. But I wanted to mention a game that I've already told you, my audience, that I love, StarCraft. Huge StarCraft fan. Love StarCraft. Quality game. Quality RTS game, right? I'm also pretty shit at that too. But again, we have tournaments. So I have to take care of that. StarCraft 1 released like way back when in the 90s, right? And then StarCraft 2 released, was that like
2011.
2011? Yeah, like 2011. Yeah, shit, man. But like there was a massive gap. People thought like StarCraft 2 would never get created, but then it did, right? And then now StarCraft 2 is here, and people were wondering, well, where's StarCraft 3? I don't believe StarCraft 3 will be created any fucking time soon.
Nope.
And I think the reasons for the delay now are different from the reasons for the delay between 1 and 2. Because StarCraft is made by Blizzard, right? And Blizzard has a massive franchise on its hand, right? Fortnite, right? Fortnite's Blizzard, right? I think so, right?
No.
Epic.
No.
Let's see, Epic.
Call of Duty.
Own Epic,
Blizzard's
I don't
now
know.
owned by
What's that?
Activision.
Activision.
What's the
Other way around, I think.
big Blizzard thing that they have?
Overwatch.
Overwatch. Okay,
Overwatch
Overwatch.
right
Yeah.
now?
But it's one or the other. But the point is that they have IP.
And Diablo.
IPs that are ongoing and make a ton of money, right? That they can sell these like DLC packs and all that. And for StarCraft, I mean, I guess you could redesign the game that way, but you would certainly lose a lot of the audience. It's just so much easier to monetize.
You'd have to
There are
completely innovate again. And again, passive income is really fucking easy. I think that the problem is, when we look at just the video game industry, it's passive income.
Yeah.
Nobody likes to innovate anymore.
Not to even mention the fact that like esports rely on these games being relatively static, and there's a whole esports built up around StarCraft 2 now, which while it's not the
StarCraft
biggest...
2 built esports. Like, let's start give it the respect it deserves. It built esports as we know it.
Brood War
Respect
built
here.
esports, but
It's actually Magic the Gathering, but it's fine.
StarCraft, yeah.
Yu-Gi-Oh!
but like the while it's not the biggest here, we have in the
Thanks for
United States,
noticing
we
me.
have to recognize that, like, you know, in other countries like South Korea, StarCraft 2 is like literally the biggest thing. At least it was a couple years ago.
I'm gonna also sing praises of StarCraft 2. It's the next game that they're using artificial intelligence to like figure out like how good it. They already used chess for that, and the next thing after chess was Go, and then it's StarCraft 2.
Mm-hmm.
So like it's kind of crazy actually.
But yeah, so someone's arguing in the chat that StarCraft didn't build esports. It definitely did. Brood Wars and then StarCraft 2 helped building.
What are
What are you
Help
talking
build
about?
quick.
South Korea literally built stadiums specifically for StarCraft.
Yeah,
What are you
Woo.
talking about?
Yeah, you're wrong on that one. But and if you disagree with me, come on to the open panel.
Pretty sure it was Wii Bowling.
Yeah. So
No, we boxing, the thing that caused all families to hit each other.
Yes.
but my point is that like unless there is a crash in the market of Overwatch, excuse me, thank you for correcting me, but of Overwatch, right, or those types of games, or like a complete change in management and someone who like appreciates the RTS genre and wants to invest in it, because like you'll make money when you create StarCraft, but like as Jim Sterling would say, you won't make all of the money, right? You won't make an obscene amount of money. You will definitely be successful. StarCraft 3 is going to fucking sell, but not on the scale of an Overwatch 2 or 3 or 4, right? This is not going to happen. So unless that market segment simply collapses, or like, you know, the trends change, I don't see SC3 being created anytime soon.
Mhm.
And
That's
that was
my
the
thing.
true reason why Prime actually wanted to have this panel, is so we can actually get the StarCraft 3 going.
Not
Uh,
only
But I actually
that-
think. Oh, go ahead, Leftus.
So that I think another factor is the fact that StarCraft 2 came out forever ago, and the promise of StarCraft 3 is so like monumental in its implication that anything that's released will just disappoint. Similar to how there's never going to be a Half-Life 3, where like it's never going to live up to the hype, and it's never going to live up to this huge expectation.
Oh my god, Duke
I-
Nukem? Do you guys remember? Do you remember Duke Nukem? Oh,
Yeah.
I hate remember Duke
then-
Nukem.
And then
Like,
and
that's what
and
I
that game
mean, is that, like,
failed.
Yeah,
I
like
might kind of
we
go.
have to also think about how much the consumer has changed the video game industry too, because what was that last Zelda game that came out actually, and everybody like
Breath
had
of
a
the
fucking
Wild?
cow about it. I don't remember, but
Breath
somebody
of the
had a
Wild.
cow
Breath of the
over.
Wild. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think it's important to recognize that like the demand that we have, especially the demand for fandom and DLC and like all of these spin-offs and bullshit, like we've kind of created our own toxic environment here.
I mean, I agree with that. I was gonna say though, like going back to StarCraft 3 and like Blizzard stuff, I think Blizzard is getting a lot of pushback for the sequels they're releasing for their games as is. Like Overwatch 2 was met with like sort of a tepid response, and like the guy who's behind Overwatch left immediately after Overwatch 2 was demonstrated online. I forgot which conference it was, but they did a demo and then the guy left. And then Diablo 4 is being released as a sequel to Diablo 3, and I think Diablo 4 might be the game that folks are most enthusiastic about. But like, I feel like folks have lost faith in Blizzard's capacity to actually develop sequels that are good, and that's like their primary problem right now. It's like everything they've done recently seems fairly lackluster in comparison to like the good old days, and I think companies are aware that this is hurting their bottom line in some sense. And I mean, like, it's going to be a slow process. I'm not saying like overnight they're going to magically start fixing these things. And this also goes for World of Warcraft. Like, Shadowlands is being criticized like pretty harshly right now.
No, I figured that you were going after World of Warcraft directly though, but I think that like when Overwatch first came out, I was at BlizzCon, like there was fucking hype behind that game. And yeah, Diablo 4 people are excited about. But Diablo, I think, continues to innovate the dungeon crawler, though. So I think that there's reason for people to feel excited about that. Whereas World of Warcraft is, an ancient IP, and there's no innovation to it. There's a lot of lore and a lot of new storytelling and things that, like, diehard people get excited about. But I don't think that normies are going to get excited about the next World of Warcraft expansion. There's really no way around it.
I mean, I agree with that. Oh wait, so
Unless they have, like-
2. So Overwatch 2 was exciting to start, but then you like look at the types of things that are releasing, and I had the feeling that it wasn't as exciting.
It's story mode. Yeah, like there's not a lot to it.
Right.
It's
So I
kind of
think
like when League of Legends released that I don't know what the fuck it's called. They have a new game type. Do you know what I'm talking about? Okay. There's a new game type. There's a new game type on League of Legends, and there wasn't a lot of hype behind it when it released, but like it's gained a lot of steam because it took an IP that people are very much attached to and innovated it into a completely new game type. So yeah, I think that like there's plenty of room for these businesses to use old IP, but there's not a lot that
Well, it depends though. Like, so with Overwatch 2, like I think the biggest problem and the story mode thing is actually kind of like in this direction. They're making Overwatch more grindy. You have to actually unlock powers for the characters versus now where you just get to play the characters in their full capacity, right? And like once this stuff started getting released, that's about when the guy I can't remember his name to save my life. That's when he left as the Overwatch guy. And I think
yeah.
So like I think like what I'm afraid of for Overwatch is that they're actually going to turn Overwatch into one of these awful, terrible, not great games, right? And I think that like any new Blizzard release is going to be tainted with this conceptually is tainted with this idea that they're just going to make it more grindy and try to take as much from you time and money as possible.
Mm-hmm. Well, the more time you spend in a game, the more money you're likely to spend on it,
Like social media, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Can we do the Humble Bundle real quick?
The point is to have a captured audience.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Go after it.
Yeah, so the Humble Bundle. Kino, you had like a brilliant thing you were going to say, and then we got distracted. Because Humble Bundles is like, the collection of indie games that are being sold and packaged to a universal market. And then you said something about
capital.
social... Yeah, that.
Yes.
All right, I was ready to be educated.
What you were talking about is it's classes in session again, excuse me. So what social capital is a relationship between the consumer and the product. And what you want to do as a small business and or a large business is basically make sure that your game lives within a specific market segment that you have in fact created. but also to make, in this case, video games that relate in part to different circles. So I guess I'll just keep using video games. Hollow Knight is specifically aimed, for the most part, at a market demographic that is our age, that plays Metroidvanias, etc. That's their most obvious audience. But there are also different segments that would also be interested in it, like people who play Diablo, people who like RPGs, world building games, Dark Souls, blah 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 blah. So the purpose of social capital is basically to map out the different audiences that could relate and then buy their IP. Why I mentioned that is that Humble Bundle is such a boon to the industry because it adds people's video games onto a package deal that is then delivered to a multitude of different market segments. So what I'm doing is basically agreeing with you. To your point that it opens up video games to distribution to a wide audience as far as indie games are concerned.
Yeah, and actually, I was going to also bring up that DLCs are also included in these Humble Bundles too. So a lot of these, so it's interesting because it was designed for this one purpose, and then the corporations are actually figuring out that they can sell DLCs in the form of a Humble Bundle for a specific developer or whatever else. The game that comes to mind for me is Stellaris. It's like the space war-y game, and it has
EVE Online.
Yeah. But so it has like 10 different DLCs attached to it. Each of these things start off at like $50 a pop, I think, something like that. And then there's a few like $10 or $20 ones, but a lot of them are like fairly expensive, and I was able to get everything for like the whole game kit and caboodle for like under $100. And that was I don't know, it's kind of cool and might be like the version of DLC that sort of works for the consumer, at least, like maybe giving people that package deal. But the problem is, of course, the initial deal was you have to spend $50 for this DLC, and then eventually they couldn't sell it anymore, so they found a way of reaching, me.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, and that's the thing. Like, it is a method of distributing that DLC that ultimately, supports the end goal of maximizing the amount of profit by squeezing more money out of people like you who wouldn't necessarily have paid for it, when it came out day one, when the expansion came out. But on the other hand, then there are people like me, and they get to me, and I buy the Stellaris expansion day one because fuck, that game has taken so much of my life. But
all right, I do want to say, like, as good as Stellaris is, I still gave it a bad review because the game was so hard to learn.
It is extremely hard to learn.
I've spent like 120 hours like learning this game. I still don't understand all the mechanics involved, so I still gave it a bad review, even though I spent 120 hours on one of those because I was pissed at how long it took for me to figure out how to do anything. Yeah. Okay.
So, okay, I want to maybe continue on with that part, the part of the conversation as to what is acceptable. All right, so I think we've agreed more or less, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm like misquoting any of you, but like I think we've agreed more or less that having some sort of expansive DLC, right, some substantial DLC, is something that's worth charging for, that we can accept, right? Like people were pushed against it before, but now I think it's like, all right, look, we're gonna have to give some place, right? So, all right. But now let's talk about microtransactions, not loot boxes specifically, right? But just microtransactions.
Blizzard has ruined my life. No, I've definitely engaged in some Blizzard microtransactions in my life. There's like the pets, and then there's the transmogs. That's where you make your armor look pretty.
You have to pay for transmogs now?
Not all transmogs. There's just 4.
Okay.
And I never got them.
I'm like actually mad about that. Okay.
Yeah, no, I never got them. I never got them at all. And then somebody in my guild gifted me one, and then my OCD kicked in, and I was like, I have one, but not the other 3. This is not cool. This is not fair.
They get you.
And no, like it's really bad. Like
And
So then, of
panther
course, I
mounts.
into it. Yeah, so there's the pets, there's the mounts, there's the race change and the faction change. So when your guild falls apart, you are probably spending $55 because
That
finding
annoyed
a
me.
good guild is really hard. And then if you've got 24 characters, that looks really bad. Yeah, so the microtransactions really suck, is my stance on it. But I also understand their value. They just need to not like try to take advantage of their customer base. I think would be the my stance on this.
I would say that like faction change and realm changes, though. Oh God, is this like the abortion debate where if you like overuse it, then you're a bad person? Okay, so I think that like, um, I like where it gets exploitative though is that like Blizzard fucking knows that people are looking for guilds. They're professional raiders, like I was, and you have to move. Like you have to fucking move in order to go into this opportunity that you have. And yeah, in that case, it's exploitative because it could very possibly, if you don't have enough money, take away from your experience of the game. And again, if we are defining what is ethical DLC based upon game-breaking mechanics, then that does kind of break the game for you, right?
Right. And the other thing too, by the way, and I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but what Blizzard will do before a new expansion releases, they'll give a sale on these transactions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like if you're switching to a new guild anyway, it's like a
Yeah.
lifesaver because it's going to save you like 30%
And it's passive
off.
income. It doesn't cost
Right?
Blizzard a fucking thing to
Yeah.
do. So yeah, they might as well offer it at a discount.
Right, but
Mhm.
if you were not going to transfer, you're going to hold your ground because it's way too expensive to transfer. This is really stupid. That discount kicks in, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, all these dreams I've had for the last year and a half for like all these microtransactions I want to do, they've come true. And then all of a sudden you can do that. So that's like the toxic stuff. The thing that Blizzard did that I thought was good. So there used to be this thing. I mean, there still is this there's gold farmers, right? There's people who will like do repetitive tasks in the game, and then sell the gold for real cash, right?
RuneScape bots and stuff.
Dude,
Yeah.
I was literally gonna mention, I think the only acceptable form of this is like, back in 2009, I was like, Dad, can I use your credit card? I gotta pay some guy on a sketchy website to go in and mine Rune Essence 24/7 until I have like 5 million gold. That's the only acceptable form of microtransactions.
Right, and it's okay because it's like someone who actually needs the money. But I did think that Blizzard did a good job in selling World of Warcraft tokens and allowing folks to use the gold that they've earned in game to get Blizzard, basically gift cards for Blizzard products, the digital products, obviously, because passive income, etc. And then also folks with money could buy the tokens and have gold in the game. So if they're too busy to make all the gold, but they have like a professional life, so like this caters to like those of us in our 30s, I guess, or something. I don't know. Basically, yeah, you can play the game at the same level as someone who spent like all day farming herbs for X, Y, or Z. So I think that's like slightly less exploitive than everything else.
I don't know if it isn't though, because they understand that the system doesn't give you the system, sorry, Illuminati emojis, that the system doesn't give you any fucking free time to enjoy video gaming, so they take advantage of that.
True.
I think that if it impedes your ability to like advance in the like main portion of the game, it's just like really broad, but like generally I feel like that's kind of something that's not acceptable.
So it's not for your main usually. Like I think you can spend something like 6 to 12 hours a week playing your character currently and be able to be a high-end raider. You just do the weekly content, etc., etc. It's fine. This caters to folks who might have like some sense of OCD and might need all their characters to be able to do the exact same thing, and it costs X amount of gold and time and stuff, and you need to pay people to run you through this dungeon or that dungeon because you don't have time to gear your character because etc. etc. I think that it's in that direction that this might be used. And it could be exploitive because, Well,
I mean, then we have to start talking about like the business practices of the gold farming companies themselves, because they are companies. They aren't usually single actors.
I
Well,
have a chapter on that.
For example, Steve Bannon of political fame here in the United States made a bunch of money and discovered the gamer demographic by investing in gold farms in China. So, like, again, kind of comes back to like my opening statement about how like politics and video games, man, they're really connected here. It all keeps coming back around.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. I think like if it was gold bought from like one of those websites that just spam all the different servers, that's one thing, versus like a small time independent gold farm. And so the thing is that Blizzard kind of undercut. I feel
I
like
need to work at an artisanal gold farm. I'm sorry.
no,
Free trade gold
these
farm.
are folks. These are folks who are
Free-range
working
gold.
for another company. And what they do, they have 3 WoW accounts, and they just I know it's absurd. It's so absurd, but it's true. Okay. But no, like they're small time. They're trying to. I knew someone who was paying their rent through gold farming. Like they didn't have a lot of cash. They were paying their mortgage and a few other things by farming gold and botting and doing things they aren't supposed to do in game. But that's how they made their day-to-day buck or whatever. So there's something to that. It's just it does sound extremely absurd when we're thinking about artisanal gold farmers. Like
You got a
again,
guy like he's like in a cage,
Oh no.
sitting in a computer. But he has grass.
Like,
so it's
I
okay.
think that you're hitting on a more universal topic, which is like desperation within an economy that doesn't support its citizens. I don't know if we want to like stop at this line right here and then pivot, but
I think it's interesting, and it's another thing that we need to dig into at some point. But just like what should and shouldn't be allowed in those like MMOs, like what they've made a black market, right? Like, so people are mining gold because you've made this like an artificial barrier, right? That you have to
Right.
grind at. Not everyone has the time or the effort or the patience to do that, and you're like rewarding. So basically, WoW. And I haven't played WoW, so if I'm saying something wrong, please someone correct me. It's fine. But like it seems like you're rewarding those who have that time, who can put everything else on their life on hold, right? And saying that if you don't have that amount of time to invest, then no, you don't get to have this other piece of content, right?
it's not quite like that. So the thing with World of Warcraft is that there's been like this exponential increase in gold availability in WoW to the point where they've started creating gold dumps, right? So what they're doing is they're
Phrasing.
basically creating mounts and other things that have cool, like in the last expansion, there's this giant brontosaurus you could buy that had an auction house attached, and no other mounts had this, right? So the amount of gold it took to buy this thing was about $800 worth of gold, like in units, right? So what people did is like this guy that was in charge of the guild I was in literally bought all the WoW tokens necessary to get this mount because he wanted it. He was a completionist. Or people would buy the tokens and then ask other players to run them through difficult content. These are really skilled players. They spend a lot of time playing the game, and they would charge like maybe what would it be, like $20 worth of gold for one run, and then these players would accumulate gold that way and use that gold to get this mount. So what it became was like this sort of in-game currency being used as real dollars to get certain things within the game that aren't necessary but still quite useful.
but also not economy breaking though too. And I think that was really
Right.
important. Was that I quit World of Warcraft right when it came out. So my experience with it is very limited. But what I remember is that it was an economy breaking. But to the original point though, often in MMOs, the gatekeep to progress is time. It's just how much time you have. But you compare that to mobile games, which do everything that they can in their power to advertise to you and put it in your face that you can skip, and here's a boost, and they just it's like a next day lock, so I guess it is like time to a degree. but there's still like an obvious lock. Because yeah, in World of Warcraft, like you can, there's no like day locks or anything like that, right?
Right. I mean, like the only lock is like
Quests and stuff.
how much resource you can get each week, right? Like you can run a mythic
Yeah.
raid once a week. You can run, but there's no way you can spend gold to be able to do that more than once.
Yeah.
Is the
So
thing.
do you find either platform or either monetization to be more or less ethical than the other?
Yeah, I would. I mean, the mobile platform is so unethical
Clash
in
of Clans.
comparison.
I mean, like Clash of Clans have like far longer locks than time locks than 1 day. Like you can, especially once you get up, like at the first, like they have it increasing, right? So at first, when you get started, like things will get done in seconds, right? Then minutes, then hours, then days, then weeks, right? So you can have unlocks that'll take you like 18 days. 18 days you're waiting for for something to finish building, basically, right? Uh, but of course, you can just buy the gems. You can buy the gems, and with the gems, you can speed it up. You know, like no problem. Just finish that immediately, right? If you don't want to wait. When a new expansion comes out, there's people like who automatically have their clans, like their bases, like completely upgraded immediately, right? And you're like, well, how did that happen, right? Like that should take you like literally months. Well, they bought it. You have people with money, and they put a lot of goddamn money into it, and they're like, all right, I'm already done. You
Now,
know,
if it's not ruining their life, like there is an argument to be made that like you can put your money where your passion is, right? And you have the right to do so. And so like it's not unethical necessarily for this sort of thing to happen if it makes people happy. But if people are ruining their lives to get that really cool base, that's bad.
That brings up a topic that I wanted to bring up at like the second thing that anyway, I'm surprised that this hasn't come up yet, which is advertising and monetizing directly off of literal children.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
It's like
what
really
do you
bad.
mean by that exactly? Like
But
advertising towards children or off of children? What do you mean?
so it's multifaceted. So if a video game, we've talked about market segmentation and how video games generally, not indie games, but large scale games generally want to cater to the widest and most universal audience possible, which also includes children. Now, when you open up a video game, it doesn't really account for how old the player is, but it will still ban them with advertisements. I think that adults do recognize that, you know, it's obnoxious and perhaps toxic to their mental health or whatever. Not to be dismissive, sorry. But you also consider that there is a large demographic of literal children who are being exposed to that.
My kids literally see a play button over one of those ads and will
Mhm.
try to click on it like reflexively because they want to watch the video.
Yeah.
Like that's how like effective this stuff is.
Mhm.
Oh, also in VC chat, I'm going to post the type of Facebook game ads that I get and how like completely
Oh, boy.
F they are. Like this is actually like an actual ad that I had to download because it was that ridiculous. So if you guys want to check that out, you should. It's insane. It's like the most ridiculous ad I've ever seen in my life. But yeah, no, I think like the direct marketing to children and the way these mobile games do things is actually extremely toxic, not just for like the gaming community, but for like people in general. It's almost like lottery ticket gambling style stuff, right? Except you're not even getting a chance to win a lottery. You have the chance to just, you know, spend your wealth on nothing. I think we're all gonna agree on this. I don't know.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at this ad. I can't watch it right now, but like just like that freeze frame.
Right.
Oh man. Oh.
So bad. It's so bad. Like I couldn't believe it.
It reminds me of there was a long running series of ads for this one game, and the ads were like out of this world insane with like these like soap opera level of like plot twists or whatever, and like in the game none of that shit happens, and it just it was just reserved for the ads. And it was wild. Saber Spark ended up doing a video about it, and it's so wild. I suggest
forward that to us. I don't know what game you're talking about, but it sounds interesting.
There's a video like Danny Gonzalez did about these insane ads that like don't correspond at all to the game, and he's like, the goal is just to make them absolutely as absurd as possible, and people just download them or they click on the video.
Well, I mean, all you
Yeah.
need is like 0.1% of like the millions of people who are getting the ad to like click on it, and you are going to generate.
Yeah. Hey guys, if you want to see what it was referring to, go into the VC chat in the Discord, !point Discord and chat. If you want to see, you should be joining the Discord any which way. But yeah, then we have a channel VC chat where that's being posted.
I put the video that Saber Spark did in the chat. It's a
In the
long
VC
one,
chat.
but I would recommend watching it later. It's fucking wild.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Check it out, guys. !point Discord if you want to see what we're talking about. I'm actually really curious. I'm going to look at this myself later on.
Oh, those. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that brings up another thing I wanted to talk about. Is it was part of the question about like lying, in terms of like lying about what's inside, right? And I want to bring up Peter Molyneux so bad. Yeah. If you're old enough, you know what I'm talking about. But but we don't have time for that. So it's kind of
Well, you're going to continue the conversation, right?
Yeah. Well, we can continue the conversation, but even then, like, so part of this was talking about like worker exploitation, and we really didn't dig into that.
No.
But it would be great if we could, especially have like a few more people who were within the video game industry. But we're not going to find active workers, so they're never going to come on and talk about this. But like former workers,
I'm an active
fight
worker.
me, Chet.
Yeah. But like if we could find more, especially to get their firsthand experiences on this, that'd be great.
That's one thing. That's one thing we could. That could be a topic of conversation too. Is like the blacklist, because I know Jim Sterling is one of those people that's like blacklisted within the game industry. I think that's an interesting topic to delve into.
One day, hopefully, we can get Jim Sterling on here. That'd be amazing.
Yeah,
that'd be great.
But to my audience, we are going to roll into our open walk-on panel right after this. The content does not end. We're going to continue on this conversation. Apparently, there are a lot of people in chat who really want to continue with this conversation. They have their own opinions on this. I think we're all wrong. Hey, this was supposed to be a discussion panel where we just kind of dig into this. But the open panel, we're very much fine with Bloodsport. So if you think we're wrong, we think we're all fools,
I
right?
love this format, by the way, and thank you for having me, and thank you
so
for
much
hosting
less
this, because, yeah, I adored this. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, fantastic. Yeah, I'm glad you guys liked it so much.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. We'll definitely have more of these in the future too. I'm trying to change things up a bit for the channel. Like I said, I was trying to always give you guys new content. And yeah, so I'm glad you guys like this a lot. So anyway, my point is that if you guys want to come on and talk about how terrible all our ideas are, that's perfectly fine. Jump to the open panel. I'd love to have you. So the content does not end. I'm gonna give these amazing individuals an outro, and then we'll continue on from here. So we'll start on the other side. Left this out. Thank you for coming through and sharing your perspective. Tell a little about yourself.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. As I said before, I do political content. I sometimes, do drum streams and stuff like that. I'm still doing a series called Voices of Pride, where I interview LGBTQ people. So if you're LGBTQ, just hit me up. We can work something out. And and hopefully I can be in more panels in the future. I'm trying to get on more panels and get a little more out there and get my face out there. But yeah, if you like politics, if you like media analysis, if you like drumming, come check me out at twitch.tv/leftistl, on YouTube as The Leftist Owl, and on Twitter as @LeftyOwl.
It'd be helpful if you type in my chat so I can shout you out.
I was gonna say, I was trying to do that.
Mad Latin. I was really excited when this person accepted my invite. It's like, oh, Mad Lad's coming. I know I'll have a good panel, but I at least have Mad Lad, right? I can't speak for anything else, but if I have Mad Lad, I'm gonna have a good panel. I'm gonna have an engaged guest, right? Who's never gonna be afraid to share their opinions, right? And as always, never disappoint. So I
really appreciate that. Thank you so much for having me. I was really excited. I had lots of things I had to do today. I have like a book deadline I'm working on, and then I was actually gonna get back into WoW finally. So there's this raid that I was gonna I begged and pleaded to get in on, and then he sent me the message, and I was like, "Hey, remember how I begged to get in this raid? I'm just gonna have to not do that tonight. Sorry." Seemed fine though. We'll see. So no, I was glad to be here. Had a great time. Thank you so much for doing this, and appreciate the compliment. I try. I mean, sometimes I don't do the subject justice, I feel like, but I do try. So things about me. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say you try and succeed. So and yeah, thank you so much for like I didn't know I cost you.
No, I don't care. Whatever. Like whatever. It's a raid. I'll just find a new guild, spend $55, transfer all 24 alts, whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But no. Thanks for having me. This is my stuff. Kino, you'll be proud to see that not only did I add Twitter, I added my Discord, which I have not been using actively, which I will be doing.
Oh,
so look at that.
it's a good set.
I'm learning. So I play chess. I'm a professional chess coach. So if you want to learn chess, you can go to hypechess.com and take lessons.
Oh shit.
With me. I am streaming the States Chess Cup on Monday, so I'm returning to streaming this week. Monday night, it's Virginia versus a state that we will certainly crush. So feel free to check that out. The stream is really fun. I have a great time talking trash, and we get the players to talk about their games afterwards. So, I mean, even if you're like just a novice at chess, don't worry. I'll explain all the things. It'll be fine. I invented a chess opening. That's the YouTube link. There's my Twitter, which I'm starting to use a little bit more. I haven't included it because I haven't done anything interesting on it yet, but I guess I'm going to be doing that from now on because this is a thing. And then there's my Discord, which, you know what Discord is. So,
We know what
All right.
Discord is.
And we do. So thank you so much, Mad Latin. Again, so happy to have you around.
I appreciate it.
Entrama, another great and welcome face on this channel, and a good mod here as well. Entrama, thank you as well for taking up the call for this.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I don't really know who Jim Sterling is, but I guess I'm not as in this space as you guys are, but
They're cool.
there is a tangent. There's a character in this podcast / book that I listened to called My Dad Wrote a Porno. And in this podcast,
Yeah.
Jim Sterling is written by a British guy. The character is a Texan with a very small penis. That's all I'll say about that.
La, 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 la,
And
la,
that's
la,
all
la,
I
la.
could think of.
I too am 5.
That's all I knew when I heard Jim Sterling. Anyway, I'm in Troma. I'll put my links in chat. I talk about some politics and environmental issues and do some geography and gaming nerd shit. So come by and hang out with me. You put my Twitch link was there. Also feel free to join my Discord as well. And yeah, thanks so much for having me, Prime. This has been fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, next we have Riverboat Jack. I was actually thinking of Riverboat Jack when I was like writing this question because I know she'd been in the gaming industry. So Riverboat Jack, thank you so much for spending time here.
Yeah, of
as
course.
always, you're like fantastic.
I'm always happy to be here.
Every single panel that is it pronouns? Just make sure. She. Okay, perfect. Every single panel that you're on is fucking blessed. Like you've been here for the entire experience that I've been on Prime stuff, and I love it every single time I see you.
And you always put a smile on my face, Kino.
Thank
You're just
you.
like always like a delight.
No affection, thank you. Go ahead.
Oh, that's right. Hi, my name's Riverboat Jack. I'm your resident socialist. I'm here to talk about labor relations and why workers should democratically control their workplaces to reduce the amount of coercion that happens in society, and to talk about decommodification and how we can make the world a better place by giving the homeless homes, giving health care to people, and giving people like food, water, electricity, stuff like that. Generally world improving things. That's what I talk about. So if you're interested in making the world a better place, you should follow my channel, twitch.tv/riverboatjack.
Thanks so much.
Based.
And who I rate often. I rate Riverboat Jack often, and I think it's a good choice.
Thanks.
Oh, late
Brian.
streamer. Okay.
That's the only one who's
Yeah.
on, yeah.
Shh. All right. Next, last but absolutely not least, we have a great friend, a great ally of this channel from way back. By way back, I mean like a year ago. As far as this
I
week
mean,
goes.
your conception, yeah.
Yeah.
The dawn of prime time. That was awful.
I too was there for Prime's conception.
Wow.
Sorry.
Damn, that's that's a pretty good
Unmod
fuck your mom
Enstrama. Do it now.
I get that on the daily.
That was really good. I love it. That was really good. Thank you for that. But oh boy. Your mama jokes aside, Kino Elise is just an amazing
Oh no,
friend,
attention again.
and she has and she does amazing stuff on this channel, like the site, her own channel, which apparently she's streaming again. I missed your first stream back, and I was like very sad about
Yay!
that. But our friend Kino Elise does something very unique. She teaches people who are like creators, right? Like how to market yourself in this digital age, right? How to use the tools out there available, like social media and stuff, to like build your platform. I'm one of her students.
That
I'm not a
you
very
have
good
found
student,
within
but
your
like
draft.
you,
You're amazing, and we need to talk about your metrics again.
uh,
Especially after you're changing everything up. Like, I didn't know how much you were going to change things up. But again, I loved this, and I am looking forward to this being successful because this was a lot of fun.
Oh, okay, great,
Yeah.
fantastic, yeah. So yeah, that's well, it's Kinolis. Kinolis is check out her channel. You won't regret it, especially if you're like a creator. Like you're going to get information that you won't get anywhere else. It's really amazing what she's pulling off. So go check her out. And Kinolis, if there's anything I missed, let the audience know.
No, you did my job for me. Thank you, because I'm scared of self-promotion. I'm really good at teaching people how to do their own self-promotion, but I'm scared. So thank you. And thank you for this platform again. Like I'm gonna be broken record for the next like week. I loved this. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, I wanna do something that like invites more people, because blood sports is a certain kind of individual who loves that, right?
Yeah.
And it turns off others. And like, you can't dig into like a lot of topics the way you'd like to. And we do something like this on Lily, but Lily is like gender locked, and I wanted to expand this to get my my testosterone sharing individuals here as well. I want you guys all to be involved in this, and more expansive topics here. So I was thinking about doing this, and I'm glad you guys have liked it.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Very much so.
So we are going to roll on to our open walk-on panel.
Fight me, Chet.
Anyone here is welcome to join us, and there apparently are people here who want to fight. But if not, that's okay. They spend your time, your energy, your knowledge, and your passion. With my audience, I know they appreciate you as much as I do. Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.
Ciao.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
Thank you guys. Are you guys rolling into open stuff?
I think I might. I might stick around for a
Depends
little
what the
bit.
topic is.
Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's a start.
It's a start. Whatever.
We'll see. I mean, like,
Guys, like seriously, you're all. I loved this.
I
No,
love
it's
your
really
outfit,
fun.
by the way. I've been meaning to
Rose,
say that
thank
the
you.
entire time.
So yeah, I'll see you on open panel then.
no.
Ciao.
Hell yeah.